Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. It is our second show, and tonight we're doing 2021's The Suicide Squad. I'm Captain Logan, and joining me tonight is my sidekick now, Austin, TheDayGhost. Austin, thanks a ton for agreeing to join me for these. It is a very long time to talk all by yourself.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I agreed as much as you put a bomb in my head. So now I kind of have to do this show. So
yeah, and just keep in mind that I'll be able to trigger that even if we lose an internet connection.
Damn. I was really hoping a storm was coming in.
Don't start walking the other direction, even if people are trying to kill you.
The only thing I can hope for is for Sarah to knock you out. So hopefully that happens on the show.
This is going to be a really fun experience, I think. This is a movie that I have had kind of a 180 on since I started preparing for this project, and I've watched it a bunch now. I've spent a lot of time with this, especially because we had a couple of unfortunate false starts with this, so I've had even another watch since a couple weeks ago when we tried to do this, and it'll be fun talking about that experience and the kind of analysis that I've come up with character and story and such. And Austin is kind of our the closest thing we have to a resident Suicide Squad expert, and we'll be able to fill in some gaps about history and adaptation that I don't know about myself. I haven't read a ton of Suicide Squad myself, and I looked a little bit into that, but knowing I had Austin here, I want to let him do a lot of the background stuff for this show. Welcome, everybody. If you're watching live, thanks for watching after the fact. We appreciate that as well. Just a real quick plug for Patreon. If you would like to become a Patreon producer, that is at the $10 tier on Patreon. It's patreon.com/geekvolution, and that gives you a lot of fun rewind perks. You can help us pick shows, pick movies for the show, and join our Discord, among lots of other things. And you can do tweet-length reviews, which we'll do right at the end of the show. And Austin, try to help me remember to do that, because I haven't even pulled those up. I just realized. And then I also want to mention that for each of these shows, I am putting out a message on the community tab and letting people give us comments that we can respond to throughout the show, and that is not on Patreon. That's just for everybody watching on the channel, and we're going to respond to a number of those tonight, and thanks to everybody who's been participating with that as well. Austin, are you ready to get right into it?
Yes, I am.
All right, here we go. Make sure if you're going to watch it with us, and we encourage you to do that, but we will make this as listenable as a podcast as possible and provide some context about what we're talking about as we go. You can watch it on HBO Max or pull out your DVD, Blu-ray, however you're going to watch it. I'll be watching it on disc myself, and this is one of, by the way, I should mention, and usually I have it sitting right here, but I don't have my box. I guess it's still back there. So, yeah, I'm so prepared. This is one of the better releases on disc that I've gotten in a long time. Austin, I like this one a lot. I like the menus a lot. There's a lot of really good features. And I got the Target exclusive with the kind of background art book, which is really pretty. And it's got a cardboard slipcover that looks really nice, and if you can find that one, I recommend that release. It's really good.
See, if only we had Target.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find it online. All right, folks, 2021, just 2 years ago. This is barely old enough to even be covered here. We're keeping the old 2-year rewind rule for the commentary project, and away we go. Here we go. Everybody, please press play. Right. Oh, you know what? I forgot the timer. My apologies. If anybody needs a timestamp, because I don't have time now to throw that up, just mention it in the comments, and I'm sure somebody can help you out with that. I'll try to make sure that I do that next time. Everybody, please press play right now. I'm Johnny Cash.
Yeah, it's such a good opening. Just, hello, I'm Johnny Cash, then you fade into the logo.
So I'm going to try really hard. Oh, real quick, let me mention with the WB logo, I did not catch until my fourth viewing of this movie the like tape, the blue and the red tape around the Warner Brothers logo, which is setting up the tape that Rooker is going to have that he is throwing his ball at that'll bounce off and hit the birds.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's there.
Just kind of nice little details.
Mhm. Yeah, it's cool that it's got that wall, like the wall of the prison behind the logo.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything to read into that choice beyond just, being in the spirit of the scene you're about to watch. One is red, one is blue. I don't know if there's any attempt at like a light dark thing there, or if it's just arbitrarily the colors that were chosen.
Yeah, it could be a Harley thing because that's something we go to quite a bit with her.
That's a good
Especially in the
point.
hair, maybe.
So I'm going to try not to spend the entire commentary saying, here's a thing that I didn't like the first time out, and here's why I like it now. But I'm going to have to do a little bit of that here and there. And one of those right out the gate is the Johnny Cash thing, because it felt like the most obvious possible song starting in a prison in a movie that, being a sequel to an adaptation already about this material. Okay, we have to once again start with getting the team together and establishing the premise of how the Suicide Squad works. I like that Amanda Waller just gets it out of the way right away. Okay, you know the drill. We're gonna put this thing in your head. 10 years off your sentence. Okay, go. We don't have to spend all this time acting like this is the most complex, difficult to grasp premise, like the first movie sort of does a little bit. That was John Ostrander.
Yep. Yeah, it's a perfect cameo.
And I didn't realize it the first time I saw it, because I just hadn't seen him in a long time, and I didn't know what he looked like at his current age.
No, I didn't know that until just seeing it like on the internet, where people are like, "Oh, hey, Ostrander was in this movie." It's kind of like Claremont in Days of Future Past.
But on first viewing, I was surprised by how much this felt to me, and it doesn't now, too much like the first movie, where I'm like, immediately we have to go to, and I realize it's James Gunn and he does this, but immediately we have to go to some kind of popular music that you're aware of. It felt like the kind of the obvious choice, and then we're getting the team together right away, and the flavor of the comedy seemed really close to that, and it departs after a while enough where I started to realize it was its own thing, but like that gave me kind of a sour taste in my mouth first time around. And now when I watch it, it feels completely divorced from the first movie. But the first time I saw it, that completely threw me off.
I think part of it though is that the first movie in editing is trying to be a James Gunn movie, and then this just is one. So like, if you're kind of tuned into it in a certain way, I can kind of see where you're coming from, even though like I don't think they're that similar.
Yeah,
they are in that they're both like Suicide Squad movies, but like, so there's like certain things that obviously you're gonna have with that.
Well, and I wonder if part of the problem for me is just a taste thing, where the Suicide Squad premise doesn't immediately appeal to me. I have to be won over on the story and the characters, and I have to find the humanity and the heart in it, because the kind of exploitative violence doesn't immediately appeal to me, where like some of the fun of this I think is the somewhat grindhousiness of it, and I don't care about that on the face of it. I'm not a big action exploitation fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not a big fan of the stuff that he's looking at as inspirations.
But once again, once I realize what he's doing and that the movie is actually about something, and I'm able to find my in the comedy with the places where it really does, tickle my sensibilities and appeal to me, then I'm able to either look past that stuff or in some cases even get, again, won over by it. Mm-hmm. So the idea of establishing all these characters and then the majority of them are going to die is very clever and creative, and I feel like you were mentioning a second ago that the first movie is edited like a James Gunn movie, and that because of the popularity of Guardians, it wants to be that. With this, it's almost like he's trying to create what that movie should have been in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's always how I've seen this, where like there's certain similarities, and I feel like it's just him coming in and going, okay, but like this is obviously what this movie should have been in the first place. Absolutely.
And in some
And
cases, and we'll talk about this later, I think it's even doing some of the stuff that the first movie is that might have been counterintuitive or not what like actual Suicide Squad fans would want, and Gunn going, but if it has to be like that, if it has to be the supervillains sort of become superheroes at the end movie, here's how you can do that and make it compelling, whether or not it should have been that. We've got a comment that I'll read a little bit later where that was somebody's kind of issue, pet peeve with this movie. And I think if it has to be that, this is one of, if not the best example of the modern, in my mind at this point, anti-hero movie, if you don't count Guardians at all.
yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Because it's also the blueprint for what Sony should be doing if it has to keep going there.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, and I feel like the opening of this is what that Deadpool 2 thing is like with X-Force is what it thought it was, or maybe not what it thought it was, but like this is that done better, where this fits into what the premise is and what the story is, while that feels like it's wasting time, and it's just there to be like, haha, look at all these people that died.
And I won't talk too much about that, but I think that's effective as well. I don't know which is necessarily better, but like with that movie, it seems like it's kind of making fun of the fact that every singular superhero movie has to be a team movie now. So that didn't feel like wasting time to me. I kind of appreciated on a parody level that it was going, let's make it a team thing, do that cliche, and then nope, it's not that at all. We're gonna kill everybody.
Well, I think too, with me on that, just it was maybe a little bit worse because we knew they were making an actual X-Force movie as a sequel to that. So yes, there's like a built-in parody thing, but it didn't really hit me on that level. But anyways, back to
that's fair. This opening isn't just subverting your expectations, but it's also going, like you said, here's the premise, and the first movie got cold feet about it.
Yeah, the first movie has like the one token death, which is, or I mean, I guess what's his face dies at the end, but
it's got that token death at the beginning that you know is going to happen because he wasn't in any of the advertising.
Yeah, and he's not in any of the introduction stuff before that. Like he just shows up there.
He just shows up,
and that's a scene they took directly from the comics, but it's done a lot better there. Like it's just they took a scene from the comics and went, here it is in this movie, and it doesn't work. And it just feels lame that you get the one token death until the end, I guess. But
what I also like about it is that it is perfectly indicative of like it's there to demonstrate Amanda Waller's MO and the fact that she is a master manipulator, and you would know that from the first movie, but this stands alone just fine, so you don't have to have seen that. And this is one of those sequels where it's a really good idea to let it go that way, because it is in some ways that first movie done way better, but also that movie passed the first week or two when it was making a lot of money. Word of mouth got around that it wasn't very good, so a lot of people didn't see it even though it made money that might be curious about this because it's Gunn, or because the perception is the DCEU is getting a little bit better. They might like some of the actors that are in it, so it definitely needs to reestablish Amanda Waller and some of the characters that were there already, and in some cases reinvent them to some degree. I think Amanda Waller is the same character, just written better.
Yeah, that's always what I've had, is she has actual presence this time. She's the same character, but the material is just a lot better. Harley, I think, is like close to the original movie, but I think reworked a little bit and allowed to have a bit more depth. And
I think we're totally ignoring Birds of Prey.
Yeah, I agree.
It's sort of referenced, but like the attitude about that character is not that, and she's kind of out of character in that to what she was in the Suicide Squad. So this is, I don't know if I want to say it's splitting the middle somewhere, maybe just in that, well, she did leave the Joker, so like they're at least moving forward to some degree in some choices made there. I guess while we're here, we should talk about some of these characters that we're going to get rid of right away.
Yeah. So we have quite a few characters that come straight from Ostrander, like Javelin and Weasel, and then we have Arm Fall Off Boy, whose name has changed, and I'm not really sure why, with TDK.
Yeah, I forgot about
Mangao.
Arm Fall Off Boy. I thought that was a totally original creation until you just said that.
Well, I've always said he's Arm Fall Off Boy, and then when I listened to the gun commentary today, he said TDK was an original character, and I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
So I guess it's not Arm Fall Off Boy, but he's basically that character. I'm not sure. It's strange.
So we get rid of Captain Boomerang so that we can start the movie with some characters that you're already familiar with if you saw the first one, and then you could be surprised that, oh wow, there are stakes now, and we really are killing people in the Suicide Squad. I also think it's important that some of them die, or at least appear to be dead, via the Corto Maltese army, and some of them are actually killed by Waller, so that you see what all the stakes are right out the gate. And I also think this scene just does a wonderful job establishing tone and giving you a sense of how extreme the violence is going to be, how over the top all of that's going to be, the kind of intentional gratuitousness of it, and then undercutting. Undercutting's a bad word these days, I guess, but like in a good way, undercutting all of that in the way Gunn often does wonderfully with his introductions, where then we get to the real dark, bleak comedy of it all. With these are people who died.
And it's interesting because we still kind of just get like the one token head explosion, but it doesn't feel like it's the token one because we just saw a bunch of people die right before that. So it kind of just adds into that.
Yeah. Ryder put in a $2 super chat and says, did you notice they removed Harley Quinn's rotten face tattoo? Yes, and Gunn talks about that in the commentary where he and
Margot Robbie
sat down and decided that some of the tattoos should stay and some of them should go, and that one was just going a little bit too far for them.
Yeah, it was that and a Property of Joker tattoo on her back that he mentioned.
Which she changes to, I think, Property of No One.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's just like reworked while Rodden's completely removed.
So for some reason on first viewing, this whole kind of decoy thing didn't play for me at all, and I don't know if I just wasn't into it, or I felt really dense watching it a second time where I was like, this is actually, and I'll talk about the issue I have with it, but overall it's a really good plan on Waller's part in getting the real team into the Corto Maltese. It surprises us. There's like I said, kind of some dark comedy to it. I also, sorry, I have 1,000 things I want to talk about right now. I also want to mention, this is a movie that, even though it's like 2 hours, 20 minutes, it moves at a clip. Yeah. And there are so many characters that are juggled really, really well, but like there's just a ton of stuff to talk about. So I wanted to mention the guys in the chairs with like John, what's his name? Help me out, I just forget it.
Economos.
John Economos. They are like dancing around and making bets, and some of them are getting paid right now because of the people they bet on that have died, because these are people who died, Austin. This song has been stuck in my head for weeks now. I've been playing it in the car, by the way. I've been driving around playing this constantly. I love it now.
It's so good, and it's funny because I think Gunn wanted it to be the opening song of the Dawn of the Dead remake that
he mentioned
Snyder
that.
worked on. And so I think it's kind of funny that he came into this property that Snyder worked on and he makes that the opening song.
Everything about his superhero career is unfathomable. You never could have guessed any of it.
Yeah.
That, like, one of the first things he did, like he wrote a movie that Snyder directed. And now we're in the place we're at now with his running the DCEU when Snyder was the showrunner of all of that. And that happens because he gets fired at Marvel and then brought back for a minute. And then, anyway, all of that is so interesting to me. I wanted to mention the guys in the chair because that opening reminds me a lot, idea-wise and attitude-wise, of Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw that.
I did when it came out, so it's been a long time.
So you have these people who are running experiments on people without their realizing it, or in this case, running a mission that they know about, know that they're there, but the the people in the mission don't realize that they're being set up for failure, that they're about to die. And you see these people that seem to kind of have half maybe lost touch with their humanity a little bit because they're betting on people's lives and they don't really have regard for their lives. They don't really care what happens to them. And it's kind of like drone warfare or playing a video game or something. It reminded me a lot of that. And then just like with Cabin in the Woods, you come to that place where they have that clear realization that, oh, they're messing with people's lives. And here it's different. It happens a lot earlier. But weirdly, now that I'm thinking about it, it is kind of the same kind of thing even by the end, where the employees kind of take things into their own hands and decide that what they're doing is immoral and unethical, and they're not going to have it anymore, no matter what the stakes are, no matter what the consequences are.
Yeah, and the people in the chair stuff is very Ostrander. Amelia Harcourt, I think, comes from Rebirth, but the rest of them are all in that run. And
Senior Stick says, sorry, let me say this real quick.
Oracle.
It says it's to keep the planet safe from a giant beast. Yeah, in both cases, from a giant beast.
That is true. Yeah. One of them's Starro, and the other one's the audience.
Oh, you didn't like that movie?
No, that's like the meta commentary of that movie.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The audience. So a lot of people, I think, complain about this daughter stuff as being a retread of Deadshot.
Yeah.
Which I don't really have, A, because it's a different relationship, and B, because I don't see Deadshot, I see it as Deathstroke, who the character was like originally supposed to be, and it's more in line with comic Deathstroke, while Deadshot's very reworked for that first movie. So there's like a weird thing where I'm looking at it from a comic perspective while other people look at it from the movies, and I don't entirely agree with that. I don't know, how do you fall on the
well I sympathize with that. With people that aren't familiar with comics, because it does seem, especially with all of the other elements that are as much like the initial movie as they are, you have kind of the skeleton of the same story, it's just told better, right? I mean,
yeah, because
the big reveal with Waller is kind of the same even. That like, we've got to clean up her mess. It just makes sense in this case. It is more interesting, and the social commentary is clearer and more poignant.
Yeah, and I think this movie knows that Waller's the main villain, and I don't think the first film has that.
I think the first movie is just fractured and it doesn't have any sense of focus, and so sometimes it gets that, but yeah, it kind of loses the forest for the trees.
Yeah,
the best thing that movie did was cast her, though.
No, it's interesting because,
let me say that, because she's spectacular in this.
Well, and that was what I was going to say with some of the casting in that first movie is like retroactively really good. Where like, I thought Rick Flag's so boring in that first film. He's like, because that actor was in the remake of RoboCop, and they're very similar, just like no fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Boring characters, and then he shows.
But that's
up
true of everybody in RoboCop.
Yeah, no, that is true. But he shows up in this movie, and he's awesome. Like I think he's one of the biggest standouts for me in this film.
What you needed was the contrast to Peacemaker. And we'll talk about this more later, but you have a really interesting sort of triad going on between Peacemaker and
Bloodsport
and Waller.
Oh, okay, yeah, and Waller too.
Yeah, well, no, I'm sorry, I wasn't going to say Bloodsport. I was going to say with specifically, and the reason I'm saying this is because these are three people in authority that have different feelings about like how power should be used, and whether they're working in a world that is like playing fair with them, and whether the system works, right? So it's that kind of X2 triad to some degree, with the ideologies with Waller and Peacemaker and Rick Flag. The only difference is Rick Flag and Peacemaker each have a kind of opposing naivety, I think, in how they operate with Waller. But we can talk about that more later on as we go. As far as the comparison to Deadshot thing, immediately, of course, the first time I saw this, I had that thought where I was like, oh, it's a guy with a daughter again. But once again, it feels like this movie is trying to show that first movie how to do that right.
Yeah, because the only real similarity they have is just that they have daughters. Like, it's a very different relationship, and it's saying different things about each character.
Well, and that they're motivated by their daughters, but they're motivated in different ways, right? Like, Deadshot in that first movie isn't doing it because Amanda Waller's going to kill his daughter.
Mm-hmm. No, he just wants to get back with his daughter. Well, this one doesn't really care.
And that makes it okay for him to break the law.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, quick, something else I wanted to mention. Oh, sorry, what?
Well, I was saying Bloodsport's not a good dad. Like, he only cares about his daughter because she's going to die.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is when you have supervillains as your main characters, the way to make this premise work but also make them sympathetic is to make them interesting first and sympathetic second. And you got to get there eventually. We got to find the humanity not too far in, or we're going to want to turn it off quickly. And I think that's the big risk you take, that some people are going to come into a movie like this, and I had this first time around, and not want to keep watching it because I don't immediately understand why I'm supposed to like or care about these people. But the payoff, if you can trust the filmmaking, if you can trust the storytelling, is that these colorful, interesting, kind of out there characters, maybe they're mad, maybe they're insane, will start seeing a spark of compassion and humanity in them, and that does start happening. And before the halfway point, more with certain characters than others. And some characters start off, kind of pathetic, like Polka Dot Man, which immediately makes them more sympathetic than some of the others, where you're like, this guy's nuts, but it clearly comes from a place. This is a super damaged person. Whereas with Bloodsport, it's like, I've seen this character before, like a lot, right? Where he's got a chip on his shoulder, he doesn't like authority, he kills people for money, he doesn't care about anything. Like it takes a lot longer before I understand why he's a human being. And his constantly saying there's not any good in me tells you, especially again if you can buy the storytelling, that oh, there really is humanity in him. Put a pin in that, we'll find it later. And
exactly,
and indeed we do. But with the first movie, it's a little bit more emotional and manipulative, where at the beginning it goes, look, here's Deadshot, he is just already a good guy, he happens to kill people, but other than that. And that is actually harder to relate to, harder to get your mind to breathe. It's funny every time. So I want to talk about the scene because I think it's the funniest scene of the movie.
And it's
and
so
I can't stop quoting it.
It's like the exact location drawn in that book too. Like they recreated it perfectly.
Is that right?
Yeah, this is what they do at before every mission is they go to this room and they get the overhead projection of what their mission's going to be.
Oh, and is that maybe why the projector is there, where it's this is a scene 80s. We took from an 80s sequence, and so let's put the projector there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, that's very Suicide Squad, is you have your explaining the mission moment where they're all in the auditorium or whatever you want to call that room.
For folks that aren't watching us right now, yeah, we were talking about the scene where they're getting their mission brief, and a couple of the most quotable things in the whole movie are there, and I cannot stop saying I don't know why, Austin, there are so many applications for it. Yes, Nanawe, that is your hand. Very good. It's really funny.
Yeah,
but overhead projector
he gets really well, because Ostrander Suicide Squad is very it's looking at the darkness in America at the time, but it's also a book where there's a running gag that Captain Boomerang's running around throwing pies at people in the prison. Like, it is a very
Oh,
comedy-driven book too.
yeah. That's a really good point because I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Hmm. No, it's balanced a lot like this. Like, it's a perfect property for Gunn to look at.
And again, the first movie is attempting that; it just kind of fails at it.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
It
Because
just
you can
doesn't
tell
quite
that they
find that
made it
balance.
ending. Yeah.
And some of it is because the characters don't feel real enough, and at the point where they kind of start to, it's just way too late in the game. What
Yeah.
they needed to do was and I mean, I appreciate with this movie that everybody is different, and I'll break down the big commonality with all of them because I think there's kind of a spectrum that we're exploring with like psychological damage and bad parenting. But I think in general that first movie should have just looked at El Diablo as the blueprint for how to inject some heart in all of their characters, because that guy worked 100% and nobody else did, which was shocking to me walking out of the theater. Like, I never even heard of this guy, and he's the only character that full on works.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and
I
I think
think.
a lot of it is. Well, I think for me, my favorite is Captain Boomerang. He's the only one that I think in both movies is the same character because he's just Captain Boomerang. But I agree with what you're saying with El Diablo. Like, they did a little bit of a better job with him.
Maybe what that, and I'm rewriting it, and I don't like to
Yeah.
do that, but I think maybe based on El Diablo and Killer Croc, I don't want to talk about this too long because we got to obviously get more into this movie, but I never had this thought before. Austin, perhaps that movie should have been a lot more about people with certain abilities or superpowers who have accidentally ruined their own lives, like through no fault of their own, and how that affects the way they look at themselves and then their behavior thereafter. Because there's a little bit of that in some of those characters, but that's not drawn to the fore, and that could have been an interesting thing to explore. And this movie is, and also this movie has more characters actually with superpowers, because that first movie pretends like they're all metas, but they're not.
Yeah, I think it's just Killer Croc and El Diablo.
Yeah, and this is about characters that kind of use those powers as a catharsis after they are damaged and ruined and turned into perceived monsters by society, by their parents or by an authority figure.
Mhm.
And
I
that's
also
that's the spectrum that I think the movie is exploring with the inmate characters, and then there's a different spectrum that's being explored with the authoritarian characters.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I feel like this movie does a good job where all of the characters fit into the themes of the movie, and it's also got that, for lack of a better word, like the type of thing where you see a James Bond movie and it's like, here's the gadgets, you use them on the adventure, and you also want that for this kind of a thing where each of them have their own different things that they do. And I think it does a really good job balancing both, making them important to the story and just getting fun with what they can do.
Yeah, I agree. And also and I think it does a good job of making those powers kind of reflect their personalities to some degree. But I also like that we're really drawing the curtain back for the DC universe, and Gunn saying we don't have to be afraid of the weird stuff. And it's also nice, like just as he did with Guardians, he's taking this material and just laying it out there and going, if you're into this, you're into this, and these characters don't have to already be familiar to you, and it can be the weirdest ideas in the world, but we can find the thing that will relate to you in it. So like I love doing stuff like this where you take a character like Polka Dot Man and you say, where is the tragedy in that?
Mhm.
And,
Yeah, no, that's the
and
big
he
thing I like
finds
about
it.
Gunn as a writer. Yeah,
Yeah.
because even King Shark, like King Shark's a giant shark voiced by Sylvester Stallone, which is an inherently funny
Which is
idea.
just preposterous.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, like he's a very like lonely character, and like there is a sadness to him that makes him work just beyond the fact that he has a silly voice. I'm also so glad that Gunn got to introduce King Shark, and we weren't stuck with the first movie's version of that character.
Yeah, which was a version of one of your favorite characters, Killer
Yeah,
Croc, done horribly.
done horribly. Yeah, exactly.
Somebody said, "Oh yeah, DNA. You mean you didn't like Killer Croc, who was definitely not a baffling racist stereotype?"
That's the thing that always gets me. Yeah, is he's just like a racist stereotype. It's really weird.
I don't know. I think Stallone is doing a shark stereotype. You know, I think
That is
sharks
true.
should be offended.
I also like the idea that King Shark is smart. Like if he goes under the sea and like lives with his people, he's smart. But because he's a fish out of water, literally, that's why he's so stupid.
Is that supposed to be the idea?
I don't know, but I like that as an idea. It's something I've always thought watching this, that like if he were to talk to Aquaman, maybe he would sound a little bit different. I don't know.
Okay. I don't think there's any evidence for any of that in the film itself.
No, there
But
isn't.
that's
But it's
interesting if that's
an
what it
idea
is.
that I've thought about a little bit.
Another we talked over it, but another of the really quotable lines to me that for some reason is just maybe not even quotable, just stuck with me real hard. Ratcatcher 2, who of course is really endearing and is the heart of the piece and is the MVP here, most certainly. If we don't have her, there's not a movie. You need. I guess I'll say this real quick. You've got to have the example of the opposite of what all these other really damaged characters are, where she has a tragic backstory certainly, but she is much more well put together than everyone else and has a sense of optimism that they can't have because she actually had a father who cared about her and loved her. And the movie is making the case that it's all in the parenting, it's all in the guidance, it's all in the affection or lack thereof that you're given as a child, which seems to just be basic psychology. It seems to be the case in the majority of us anyway. But that line when she goes up to King Shark, I think their connection is very important and says, "You have no friends." Like I love her line delivery there. It just really sticks with me the way she says that. And I don't think it's undercutting the sadness of that scene, but I also love the comedic way that Stallone right after that says, "Oh, I'm sorry." When she then will say,
Would you eat your friends? And he goes,
Would you eat your friends if you had any?" And he goes, "No." It's wonderful.
Well, it's made so well because Bloodsport immediately goes yes, and he goes no. Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's his nature, right? Like at the end of the day, he is a giant shark.
So I'm going to read a comment that we got about this scene from Code Geass Anime Fan. How do you feel about the scene where the Suicide Squad members murder a bunch of people that turn out to be innocent soldiers? Granted, the characters didn't know that the soldiers were innocent at the time, and the scene is played for dark comedy. But, in my opinion, it makes the characters the film expects us to sympathize with less likable. The characters don't seem that broken up about murdering these people. This is especially bad for Bloodsport, who we're supposed to like because of his father-like bond with Ratcatcher, but it's hard to seem as likable after he and Peacemaker killed a bunch of soldiers to show off.
I don't know, to me that's just part of the premise. I think what works about the scene is that all of these people are clearly not like enemy soldiers. Like they're doing laundry and like sitting around doing just like everyday stuff. Like they're very clearly made out to be civilians, and none of them care because they're all bad people.
And because they're just doing what they're told, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're following
orders.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But I understand the criticism because, like, I can understand why somebody would feel that way, and I wondered about it for a minute myself. Like there is that question of, is it just played too much for a joke? Because when you get to the end and some of these same characters will decide that we've got to be heroes now and take out Starro, and also for some of our characters, the choice of doing the right thing just to do the right thing, in like trying to let the information out that Starro was the United States idea, and not covering it up like Waller does. If some of these people are, particularly with Bloodsport, and Ratcatcher, who's not killing people, by the way, in this scene, I don't think, is she?
Well, she's not really like a killer. Like she might kill somebody in this movie, but she's more the thief with the heart of gold.
But I guess what I was going to say is, if they're as moral as they are later, wouldn't they maybe at least be a little bit more broken up about this?
Well, that's the opportunity for change, right? Like it's we see how they've changed in that way. I also think
that would have been my argument for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important that Rick Flag, is the good guy, and we get his reaction of being frustrated that none of them care. I really love that moment where he's like, these people are idiots.
Yeah.
But we're working to help you.
I just think in a situation like this with these, not especially most of them well-adjusted people who have been just thrown into this random country that they don't understand at all, it would be very easy for them to be that detached and not even think about these people as people until they're there a while and have had this effect on this place. Like, they're not broken up in the sense that they're like, freaking out, oh god, I can't believe we killed all these people, but like they're not happy about it.
Yeah, I just noticed this. I didn't notice this before. When we cut to them right there, when he says, these people are idiots, Ratcatcher's got her face down like that.
Yeah.
So, like, there's an element there that I'd never noticed, that I guess she does feel bad. And she's, of course, the heart and the only other...
Everybody's got their heads down.
Yeah. Well, now they're just, like, sad puppies. That they did bad. They're in trouble.
But that's what I'm saying. They at least have feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
But they also are... I mean, I'm not saying that they're not responsible for what they've just done, but in their minds, it's got to be, well, I mean, this was Waller's idea. She told us to do this. Mm-hmm. So it's more on her from their perspective, I would think. But I also think it's entirely possible that this was more fleshed out initially in the script than it was cut down, because like there may have been a little bit more remorse, but we got to move on, and you can't help but have some of that with a movie like this. Like, if I'm gonna throw a little bit of shade at Snyder for a second. If Zack Snyder makes this movie, it is 7.5 hours long. Like, this is such an efficiently told story, and I think too efficiently, may I add, that there are certainly places where some deleted scenes should have been left back in. This is one of the most egregious examples I've seen in a while of a very tightly woven narrative that actually has a couple of pieces missing that shouldn't have been taken out, that were just taken out for time. It's not a confusing mess because of that, like Air's movie might be without some of the movies or some of the scenes not put back in, which people are clamoring for the Air cut and all that. But there are, to the cut's credit, I didn't realize there were some things missing until I saw the deleted scenes, and then
that
I
was
went,
my reaction.
Okay, it now that I know about them, though, I'm realizing that there's some connective tissue that is missing, and that's a credit to how well woven this was. It actually is difficult to take anything out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. I love our choice to show Starro here, especially because he's so much smaller than what he will be. So we're saying, like, look, here's Starro, so you're expecting this. And
that's a great point. Yeah, you're not expecting the giant kaiju.
You're not expecting him to be as big as he is. Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you're a big comic fan, you might wonder about it, or at least not be that surprised when you get to the end and go, oh, okay, so he does look like he's the size that he was in that Justice League comic.
Mm-hmm. I also think it's interesting that we basically come out right in that scene and say the Americans catch him. But, like, if you're not really thinking about it, you might not even be picking up what it's saying exactly yet. Because they're watching it and the general goes, like, oh, look at these Americans playing with this thing they caught. And, you might not fully realize that the Americans are fully to blame for all of this yet.
Yeah, that's true. But they don't play it. It's not played like a double reveal or anything.
No,
Either.
exactly.
The reveal is we're here to bury this information, not it was the United States all along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Because you're right. If you're paying attention, you do know that already. That did leap out at me the first time I saw it. That line, because maybe I'm just hypersensitive to that social commentary because it's in so much stuff now, and I was like, okay, so we're in this place, and it's handled pretty maturely, I think. And also, it's not insanely complicated as a espionage thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
it's not in your face about it. It's just there.
Yeah, no, and I like with the social commentary that we took Corto Maltese, which is already just a social commentary country in the first place, with Cuba and the Cuban Missile Crisis,
right.
And we just took it and we turned it to a different element of the U.S.'s involvement with Cuba, and I think that's interesting.
So it's kind of interesting just how much Corto Maltese we've had in live-action DC stuff now at this point. And it kind of odd, I didn't do this on purpose, that the first two movies in this series are the Corto Maltese movies. Because it first shows up in Batman, Vicky Vale goes there, and it's on the magazine covers. And then here, it's the main setting of the movie, which I was kind of surprised by, and appreciating Gunn going to the lore and finding, fake places in the DC universe to set stuff. We'd already done it in Arrow. Arrow has a whole episode called Corto Maltese, and we spend some time there in that show. But Gunn is so good at world building and making his universes feel lived in that I could see somebody that just didn't know watching this movie and thinking Corto Maltese is an actual place.
Yeah, I mean, people thought that with Wakanda, and I think it's way more likely to believe that with this. Not that I'm saying like that's an issue with Wakanda, but like, that's obviously not a real place.
No, I think that's wonderfully well fleshed out visually and stuff too. But with this, I appreciate things like the Americans call it Corto Maltese, but the proper way to pronounce it, because it's a Spanish country, is Maltese. Like I really like those kinds of details.
Mm-hmm. No, like you said, it feels like a fully lived-in world.
Let me read a couple more comments real quick, since we were just at Starro, and then we'll get to the Harley Quinn of it all here in a minute. Was Starro a villain? This is from Robert Wild. Was Starro a villain you ever wanted or expected to see on the big screen? I always liked Starro and couldn't believe we got a big blockbuster movie with him as the main antagonist, and I thought he was used great. That personally was my big in for this movie the first time I saw it, because the first hour I was not into it at all and not digging on the comedy yet, and like I don't know if I got like indoctrinated with this or something, Austin, but like I have a very different response to the first half of it now. I'm sorry, let me interject this real quick too, because this was a point I really wanted to make when we got to this scene, Austin. The first time I saw this, and I just want to mention this because I wonder if anybody else had this. When we get the montage with the president and Harley Quinn and their kind of, first date all day and going to the bird sanctuary and all of that, when we have this moment where he proposes to her, I thought momentarily that she had snapped out of a fantasy and that none of that had actually happened.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm just wondering if anybody else had that, because she is, kind of out there and in her own head a lot, and is prone to that sort of thing. And the way Gunn shoots that and edits that, it really played like that to me first time out.
Oh, it's very silly, especially with the two of them when they're like moving towards each other like that.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was saying like this thing with the birds that would never happen. It's preposterous. Because I thought what was about to happen then, I won't belabor this, but I thought what was about to happen then is he was going to be like, now we're going to put you in a cell and torture you for some reason. Something like that.
Yeah. No, I really like the idea that Harley Quinn represents anti-American ideas.
I don't understand that though.
Why? It's just because she's basically a terrorist.
Yeah,
That's what I like about that as an idea. You could say that about like any of the
that's what I
super
was gonna say.
villains.
Is why her specifically?
Her specifically because she's connected to the Joker. I think you would say the same thing if you met the Joker. That the Joker is like the ultimate representation of anti-American.
Okay, the problem with that, because I was thinking about it wrong, if that's what it's supposed to be. The problem with that is what's happened recently with her and the Joker. I found
That's
myself
fair,
thinking
but I
too
don't
much about
know.
that and thinking, well, are they looking at recent events and going, you are, because like, why don't they just go for the Joker then? Like she by herself is a symbol of anti-Americanism because of things she's done, and I assumed the big one was she rebelled against the Joker, and like I didn't understand that.
Yeah, no, I've always just taken it as, she was like her and the Joker were essentially terrorists. So
Okay.
people who are enemies of America would see those characters. Like I think Hulk Mode 365 says, it's the Joker is seen as like anti-establishment, so like she would have that to some degree as well.
Okay, and not caring about what the actual motivation is.
Mhm.
Whether they actually have any real issues with any particular ideologies, or if it's just generically anti-authority.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like, somebody like this would go like, "Oh, the Joker, like you're a criminal in the States, like you and I would be allies because we both don't like America." And then the Joker would treat him the exact same way that he would treat America. Um, because he doesn't actually understand those characters.
I was looking for a comment that I thought was here about.
Oh yeah, and you were in the middle of asking that Robert Wilde question about Starro as well. Unless you want to answer that later when we get to it, it's up to you.
Yeah, there's just so much to deal with here. I'm not finding this specific comment. Hopefully, it'll come up later. But somebody was saying that, and this is a popular complaint about this movie. I think.
Oh, about how disconnected the Harley stuff is.
Well, I was just gonna say that subplot is pointless and unnecessary. That we've got to have something for her to do because she has to be there, and I both agree and disagree with that.
So the thing I like about the Harley thing is how disconnected it is. I like that it's essentially a tie-in issue of a comic to the event that is the rest of the movie. But I
That's
also
another
just
big thing we need to talk about is the kind of comic structure of this.
absolutely. I also just think that this subplot's fun, and this speech here that Harley's giving right now is the most character development we've ever given her in any
Yes.
of the movies so far, and I really like that. And this version doesn't forget that she's essentially an abuse victim, and I think that's important
Which
because
Birds
that's
of Prey
something.
just kind of throws out.
She's too girl bossy in the
Yep.
other two films, and she's not here. Like she is and she isn't.
Yeah, and I really questioned not to review that movie right now, and I
Yeah.
hate that movie, but I really resisted what felt like, or I guess I should say, I really questioned with that movie what the motivation was behind that, because it felt, for lack of a better word, almost sort of dangerous in trying to make her kind of a almost, it read like a feminist icon or something. I mean, like she's still twisted. She's still obviously doing really messed up things, but I think that movie plays it more endearing than it ought to, kind of playing in too much to women and just people in general who see Harley Quinn as a catharsis and wish they could be like her, and like she's not a character to aspire to. It could be a bit of a catharsis to some degree, where like you can see something in the extreme and damaged way that she is and handles things in yourself, but like she shouldn't be an icon. She shouldn't be a role model. There was a little bit of that with Joker and Dark Knight with people too, and I don't think a movie should play into that. And this movie doesn't do that at all. So like, she's fun and engaging, and you can again see flashes of a real person in there somewhere, but the character progression that we're seeing with her is really twisted, and I like that we get into the heads of a lot of our characters, and we get a perspective from each of them that is warped, or from a lot of them that's warped. And so, from her point of view, she has made great strides to not be so codependent on somebody else. But that doesn't mean that we should aspire to be to a person that's going to murder someone as soon as they get red flags. So, like Gunn says in his commentary, for Harley Quinn, she's really growing up. She's really developing and being a better person for herself, but she's entirely selfish and isn't looking at anybody else but her, which is also something that she has in common with Polka Dot Man.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you put it in the exact right way, in how they view society, or what you just said. I can't remember the exact wording you just said, but with Polka Dot Man, as we're about to see.
That thing you said is true.
Yeah, the thing that you said that I had to paraphrase because I couldn't remember the exact wording. But in that we literally get into his worldview where, he was abused by his mother, and he sees her everywhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that Polka Dot Man is one of the big reasons that ultimately Starro is actually a pretty sympathetic villain.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have the same thing.
Yeah.
Oddly, that they were both experimented on and used by authority figures that should have been taking care of them.
Yeah, and I didn't really get, I guess, until Gunn's commentary that, like, obviously I know that they're a hive mind, but for whatever reason I never really thought about that Starro feels the pain of the people that he's taken over.
Oh, I didn't get that either initially.
But it makes sense when you think about it. It's just not something that I've really thought about until Gunn mentioned that in his commentary, and that Starro's literally just been tortured for the last 30 years, where they let people get the face on them, and then the Thinker like rips them to pieces and studies them.
I wanted to mention the T-shirt that Rick Flag is wearing, and Gunn brings that up in his commentary. It gave me a little bit of a different read on his character versus Waller once he said that. And to be fair, this is not a thing that I could get just watching the movie, because I wouldn't know how to interpret the script on that shirt. I don't even know what language that is. Is it Spanish or is it something else?
I think it's Spanish.
I just didn't get a super good look at it.
Yeah.
But Bloodsport has a creepy mask.
It's Alien.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't get sued because it's literally just Alien.
Yeah, he looks like an early Image character.
Yeah. And Bloodsport's like the only character I think that is completely reinvented, both in design and personality. So that's a completely new design for this film.
Well, he also has that in common with Deadshot.
Yeah.
Completely reinvented on almost every level.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that they took is that Bloodsport has like these two handle things in the comics that like teleport guns into his hands, and we reinvent that with nanotech here. So
the shirt he's wearing, if you actually knew what it said, is kind of indicative of his worldview, and it's something along the lines of obstacles or opportunities.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's like opportunities out of obstacles.
Out of obstacles.
I think something along those lines.
And if you read that into his personality, he's got this kind of positive outlook, to a fault, I would say. Not even almost, just straight up to a fault. When he looks at things that way, it's positive in the sense that he's heroic. He doesn't let things stop him from doing the right thing. But it's also that mentality that has him ignoring the horrifying nature of Amanda Waller and letting her constantly put him in terrible, dangerous situations and kind of ignoring the fact that she doesn't have his or anyone else's best interest at heart. And I think Waller also could be described by the same mantra. Opportunities out of obstacles. And if you look at that from Waller's perspective, it makes those three words really scary, right? Like, she's always looking for ways to exploit people and situations.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have Rick Flag, who's basically a GI Joe, but he works for somebody that's scary and not, a 80s cartoon leader.
And again, as I said earlier, he and Peacemaker are both... Oh, let me say this real quick. This scene with Nanaue looking out of the bus, there's a longer version of it.
Will that part come... Oh, is it this scene that's longer? Because I know there's the thing later.
Yeah. No, there's a couple of things.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
It goes on for another, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And he's looking at all these families that are showing affection for each other and longing for
that's
that.
Right.
And you would have to have that scene if you left in the scene where he's playing with the kids, but you think that he's eaten them. Mm-hmm. Because you got to have that moment where you realize that there's something, again, kind of human about him, where he's longing for family, he's longing for friendship, and then he goes and finds it. And I think the reason it was cut is probably because Gunn decided it was too much of a double beat when he finds, his fish friends at the end. I don't know if that's actually the reason that he did that, but in my mind, it's not a double beat because it's with people. I wish we hadn't cut that. I like it a lot.
I also think you can get a lot of that kind of longing and loneliness in King Shark without those scenes, but it is nice having them. So I can understand why he cut them for both time and because I don't think those ideas are lost. But they are really nice scenes. I do really like them.
They're not the scenes that the movie really needs that shouldn't have been cut. There are a couple of those. The big one is Polka Dot Man talking to the Thinker about
that's part of that,
killing his mother, because without that, you don't know that he did. Mm-hmm. There's no other scene that gives you that.
And it's his best scene in the movie, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And then, of course, just the continuity of the bandage on the Thinker's ear, which I've heard you say before. I think we were talking about this at one point, and you said that you don't see it enough that it jumps out at you. It absolutely did for me on first viewing. He doesn't have it, and then suddenly he has it, and it's in every scene, and I'm like, what happened to him? How did he suddenly get this bandage on his ear? No, that's a mistake.
I never picked up on it.
That should have been left in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is just because that sequence is, I think it's at least 15 minutes. So I wonder if it was maybe just he went, it's a little too long. It's easier.
It's not 15 minutes. It is not. It is 3 or 4. It's not that long.
Are you sure? Because it's
maybe 5, but there are 18 minutes total of deleted scenes that I know about, and that is only a fraction of them.
That's true. Well, and 15 minutes is probably an exaggeration. I mean, it is by what you just said.
But even if it's as much as 5,
yeah,
okay, let the movie be 225. It's an important
no, I
scene.
agree. Yeah, I agree. It's it should be here.
And I also just don't like the sheer amount of material that's cut out for the Thinker.
Mm-hmm.
What's here is good, but he's the character who's cut the most out.
Yeah.
Hello.
No, that's right. Yeah, there she is. Oh, we should probably talk about that.
Lloyd Kaufman. Scene. You want to talk about the 2 seconds of Lloyd Kaufman?
Yeah, where he's just giant on the one side of the screen.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
We should probably talk about that father scene that they have on the bus.
If nobody knew why I said hello like that, let me just say that what's her last name?
Clementif or Clementess.
Who's Mantis in the Guardians movie is dancing on stage, and if you've never seen her out of makeup, you'd have no idea that's who it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry.
Pretty blink and you miss it.
I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say we should probably talk about that bus scene between Bloodsport.
Can we? I love the device for flashbacks so much with that. in the bus window. And
It's really pretty, yeah.
Yeah, Gunn describes it as kind of like old Hollywood expressionism, like kind of, I don't know if surrealism is also the right word, but where you kind of create an impossible thing on the screen that's supposed to be from another character's perspective. It's not literally happening, but it explains something that happened or why they feel the way they do about something, and it's entirely visual, and it's a lot of the artistry of this movie comes from that kind of thing. You get it there, and you get the almost like blank white void in the third act, or just before the third act, that's created by the storm. That just creates this almost kind of surreal again bit where the whole world falls away except for our characters. And all of that is really effective, and it makes it stylized on the level that I thought BVS was going to be when I saw the previews for that movie.
Oh sure, yeah, because it's not realistic in any way, and it looks really nice, and it really works for what they're doing.
There was a part of me that almost wanted to do the same thing on the other side of the bus with Bloodsport, when he's talking about what happened to his father. It's like, why do we see some of her background, but we don't also do it with him? You'd think that there'd be like a contrast, but then I think Alba, I think that's probably his best scene, and he is very effective in getting across and putting what happened to him in my imagination, that I guess I don't need to see it, but just artistically, visually, Austin, I kind of wanted the contrast of it.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've never thought about it like that. I like the way it is, but that would have been interesting too, to have it that way. And I just like it as an excuse to make Taika Waititi be one of the most emotional aspects of the movie.
Yeah, and it really works.
Yeah.
I love the kind of unexpected connection between Bloodsport and Ratcatcher, because you do kind of maybe expect her to be a stand-in for his daughter in some way, and he does come right out and say, you remind me of my daughter. I think it's just in that both of them are criminals that did it badly.
Yeah.
Initially. Yeah. And then I love how very like I want to say on a dime, but in a really believable way, they form this connection where suddenly he goes from finding her weird and not wanting to be around her because of rats, and assuming that she just has some kind of daddy issues, some kind of parent problems like everybody else does. Like, she's the litmus test. She is the reason that everybody else's family issues seem as messed up and wrong as they are, because if only everybody could have been raised the way she was, even with, the sadness in her background. Again, you gotta have that. And so he's seeing in her, it's almost this like positive jealousy where it's like, oh, I wish that I had the situation that you did with your father, and I wish I could be that kind of father for my daughter. And this man who the whole movie, and I like this character more than Austin does, by the way.
I don't dislike him. He's not one of my favorite characters in the movie.
And I think he is one of mine, but I think it's through Ratcatcher. I think it's because of their relationship.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. No, Ratcatcher is in my top 3 characters of this movie. I think she's great.
Through the whole movie, he's saying, there is no good in me. Mm-hmm. And he's just lying, to himself and everybody else. It's like his father told him that he was no good, and so he's just resigned to that and has lived a life that is no good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't have it until just the way you were breaking it down. It's almost like a I'm not the bad guy thing from Daredevil.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's
I like this song
where we cut away from that polka dot man scene. This song is really good.
I'm sorry, what did you say about the polka dot man scene?
I was just saying, for people who don't know, that's where we cut away from the deleted footage we were talking about earlier.
Okay, I'm so confused about that whole thing. I couldn't figure out where it was supposed to go because
Yeah, so
he
they get
walks
back.
in with the bandage.
No, so they walk. See, and I think that's why it didn't bother. And maybe they CGI the bandage into the earlier scenes because they cut that. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe so, because
Because there is stuff like
when we
that in
first
this.
meet him, well, no, but the problem is earlier in the movie when we meet him, but the squad hasn't yet. He doesn't have it.
But what I'm saying is maybe they CGI it into that bar scene just because, like, time has passed between
So
it.
that we can just go, he had an accident somewhere. He fell down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That
Starro
sequence
bit him. Something.
Yeah. Because that sequence is they get back to the van and they realize King Shark's not there. So Ratcatcher has to go find him, and Polka Dot Man's left alone with the Thinker. And it's this really cool back and forth where the Thinker is kind of manipulating him. And you think he's going to kill the Thinker, and instead he shoots his ear off.
Yeah. Apologies for not interacting with the audience very much live yet. There's 101,000 things I want to talk about.
Now, like you said, this movie just takes off. Like,
yeah. And I have a bunch of stuff even from earlier scenes that I haven't gotten to, and I hope that I'm able to. But I had a question about this scene.
Yeah.
Austin, which is when Bloodsport is describing the death touch. Does he do it or not? Are they dead?
Yes.
I think they're dead.
No, they are. He's setting it up. The only reason he's explaining it is just to get the other two into a like, we're in agreement, this is what we're about to do thing is always been my interpretation.
I'm interested in Gunn's choice to make those guys as like kind-hearted as he possibly could before they get killed by the death touch. Like, they're really nice to these prisoners. Like, they're giving them cigarettes, and they're just like having kind of a pleasant conversation with them. They're not treating them like they're lesser at all, and then we just murder them. Like, I kind of feel bad for those guys. They were fine. They didn't do anything wrong. They were just following orders.
That's one of my favorite details from the Gunn commentary too, is neither Idris Elba or that guy who gives him the cigarette smoke, and they had to CGI tears out of the other guy's eyes because he was crying while smoking. I think that's really funny.
So I want to go all the way back toward the beginning for a minute and say that in the scene on the beach, one of the things I really like about that subversive choice to kill all these, and we cheat with it, right? Where some of those characters we think are dead that turn out not to be dead, particularly Weasel, because you've got a song that's playing under it. These are people who died, and so that triggers in your brain, everyone I'm seeing is dead, because the song is telling me they're all dead. Yeah. But they're not all. Even if you're looking at the computer screen where some of them don't actually say they're deceased, but the music is telling me they're all dead, so I assume they're all dead. But anyway, I really like that in regards to the choice of the title, because you think you're looking at the Suicide Squad, but you're actually looking at a Suicide Squad. Mm-hmm. And then you'll see the Suicide Squad, because they're the ones that are actually going to matter, and that Waller doesn't, at least at the moment, see as expendable.
Yeah, it's like they're not even a proper squad. They're just the distraction. Here is the Suicide Squad.
Now, the big kind of reservation I have about it is, I get that Rick Flag is in like an almost abusive marriage sort of situation with Waller. I mean, figuratively, where like she's the abusive spouse and he just keeps coming back for more. And there's also a deleted scene that makes that much clearer, and I don't think I would have this read if I didn't see it. So I'm also going to say that was
should have been kept in.
That was a somewhat necessary scene. Mm-hmm. That should have been put back in. Maybe not crucial, but maybe not necessary. I wish it was there. But anyway, there's a deleted scene where she basically sends him off, maybe to die just because he made fun of her blouse, and I'm like, that's how extreme the situation is.
Yeah,
I wonder if it's not going a little bit too far even for him to not question her more than he is and to not be remotely upset with her for sending him off with the decoy squad that she expects to just go there and get killed, probably, so that the other squad can get there unseen. Why does she even send him? Why does he need to be there with them? I don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the big things that I always appreciated with that, obviously before I knew that scene, it, is just the difference between this film and the first film, which is that in the first film, Amanda Waller's like obsessed with Rick Flag, and that she tells the squad that she'll kill all of them if he dies, and that's
Oh yeah,
not
that's
their
true.
relationship in any way. And I've always really hated that. Like Amanda Waller does not care about Rick Flag, and
You mean
I
in the
always really like
comics?
that yeah, exactly. And I
And I
just
don't
like
care
the
about
movie
that if
back
the
then.
story's good, not necessarily.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just that first film isn't.
But this, I just wonder if we don't go a little too extreme the other way.
Mhm.
Because I do like how abusive that is, and it should be somewhat extreme because I like, again, the naivety that you get, or the, maybe I should say, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. For a second, I'll stick with naive. You have that to some degree with both him and Peacemaker in different ways, uh, where both of them think that they're sort of kind of doing the right thing with Waller, and he calls Peacemaker when he thinks he's killed him later on a joke. But he's a bit of a joke himself if you really break it down.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
you're just a pawn. Like, are you actually making the difference in the world that you think you are? He's in denial is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said earlier, like he thinks he's in like a GI Joe world where he's just, you know, the good guy, and he is in terms of the people around him. But there is an inherent darkness to the fact that he isn't questioning a lot of what's going on around him.
Yeah.
And there is like an inherent frustration to the character, I think, that he is stuck with people who aren't as morally good as he is, but he also still goes along with it.
And he has to compromise to some degree to even be there.
Exactly.
And so he wishes he could be Superman, but he can't. And we contrast that, I guess, a little bit with Bloodsport, who thinks he hates the very idea of Superman, and then you get to the end of the movie and he decides that he can't go as far as in being not the good guy as he thinks he is, and has to actually save Corto Maltese.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like that with that, he still is willing to blackmail Waller.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's still morally ambiguous. He doesn't have a 180-degree switch. He's not suddenly Superman. I like Rick Flag, if you would just leave Waller, would have the chance at being that kind of character, maybe.
Yeah.
Not Bloodsport. He's still a villain.
Yeah, and I like the choice that
more of this expressionist stuff, by the way, this completely unreal, not at all happening, just in her head thing with the flowers and everything.
Yeah, and you get the cartoon birds because she liked the birds, I guess.
It's really neat, just visually.
It's very pretty. Yeah.
I don't know that there's anything super interesting that we're saying about the character,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that Gunn. It's important to mention this. I think Gunn took sort of a mandate, something he was stuck with, and did just the best he possibly could with it. Because I don't think he would have had Harley Quinn here at all if she wasn't the breakout from the first movie. And I don't know, maybe they told him he could do anything at all that he wanted to. I kind of doubt it, because I can read a little bit of frustration in his commentary where it's like, when he talks about how glad he is that certain characters were cast as well as they were, it comes off like, I'm stuck with these people, I'm glad I can work with them.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think part of it too, Cap, is that this movie is so Ostrander, and Harley's the big New 52 thing that's in this movie, and there's not a lot of New 52 in this. Like, guess King Shark as well, but King Shark also comes into like a sequel mini that Ostrander did. So like there's a connection there too.
Yeah, and that also feels like kind of a standard gun thing to do. Like, again, it's all about contrast. So Ratcatcher and King Shark are a couple of extremes. Like they're the exceptions to the rest of the team in that spectrum of like mental ruination by parents that I was talking about, right? So on the one side you have Ratcatcher, who was actually raised in a loving way. On the other end you have a giant shark man who may not have been raised by anyone. We don't know.
Yeah, he's just kind of always been alone, and has never had anyone. Partly due to his nature that he is just a giant shark and will eat anyone.
Yeah. So you have the personification of humanity, of altruism in Ratcatcher, and then you have the personification of the monster that society thinks everyone else is, and even that guy will ultimately show compassion and show that there's that there's actually a human being in there somewhere, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Which isn't this. Which I don't think is the movie saying that even like it's not about animals and pets and stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's saying that like even the most monstrous looking person is still a person. So it isn't saying that's an animal. It's saying he seems like an animal, but even that's like an actual guy. I just think it's important to mention that. Like the rat is an animal. Mm-hmm. It's just being controlled by a person.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Shark Man is still a man.
Well, that's
apparently.
One way where I think Gunn kind of just comes out and says the theme by the end of the movie, and it's not a complaint. I think it works really well. Where Ratcatcher's, like the original one, talks about how they use rats because if rats have a purpose in this life, then we all do.
Yeah, that's true.
And that is in a way him coming out and saying, yeah, like this is kind of what the movie's saying to a certain degree.
But Austin, you see what I was talking about from the conversation we had off camera? That they are clearly in that scene together.
Yeah, no, I think they are.
Austin mentioned to me that Harley Quinn and Peacemaker don't seem to actually interact at all in this movie.
Well,
maybe they didn't film scenes together.
I saw an interview with John Cena where he talked about doing Barbie and how he'd never worked with Margot Robbie, so he was really excited when he was cast in that. But I think at this point I'm gonna go with that movie was in development hell for a long time, so he was probably cast before he filmed this. This is also one of the best needle drops in this movie. When they're walking out into the water, we get the big slow-mo team shot.
Yep. Which you've always got at having these kind of movies. And of course, the first movie does it too.
Well, then we follow it up with that King Shark full-page spread with him ripping that guy in half, and it blew my mind listening to Gunn's commentary that that's mostly practical. Like obviously King Shark CGI, but the guy isn't. Blew my mind.
There's a lot of practical stuff I was surprised by with this. They built the beach.
Yeah.
On a soundstage.
I know, it's crazy. I didn't realize that this film has some of the biggest sets that WB has ever had.
Yeah.
It's real cool.
Well, kind of wild for a sequel to a movie that made money, but that a lot of people didn't like and weren't sure about.
Well, that's a big thing you got to give WB is that they questioned whether this should be R-rated because they were going to lose money in terms of, less people can go see it in the theater.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
And Gunn was like, "No, my movies are rated," and they went, "Okay, that's fine. Like,
yeah,
make it." You have to give it to them that they were willing to go for this.
Well, especially considering they kept going to the drawing board and reversing course every time a movie didn't do well enough early on. And one of those was The Suicide Squad. They kind of ruined that movie, or at least that's what it looks like. I mean, who knows what that movie would have actually looked like if BVS had performed the way they wanted it to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's just kind of ironic that a sequel to that gets made and they don't monkey with it the way that first movie was messed with. It's also interesting that they offered Ayer this movie. I don't know if you know
really?
that.
I didn't know that.
And he passed on it because of creative differences. I think he was there for a minute, like he was going to make it.
Interesting.
And after what they did to him, I don't know why he would want to stay.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that he at one point was going to make this. I'm glad he didn't. Like, I'm glad that we got this instead.
Let me read the super chat from Fidelio, 99 super chat. Maybe too technical, but the DC films, even at their worst, are lit more cinematically for some reason. I don't disagree with that overall. Marvel has a standard in-house look. Guardians films are the exception, but even this looks better. Well, and I was going to mention that it's interesting that I know this is kind of late in the game, but it's interesting that this movie is treated more or less like an Elseworlds film or something, just in, again, how Gunn seemed to be kind of allowed to just make whatever he wanted to, and this feels like it very much stands on its own, and it's got some connections and some baggage from the other movies, but it kind of doesn't really matter. It's stylized just in the way it wants to be stylized. And like, you can say that about all of the movies that are in the DCEU proper, besides well, I was gonna say besides Snyder's movies, which look more the same, but I mean, even Man of Steel to BVS, there's a big kind of departure. So I guess more than Marvel, they weren't having the house style thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think this, more than some of the others, just feels like a movie that could or could not even be in that world, and it doesn't even have to be a sequel to that first movie, I guess is the point I'm making.
Well, this movie has the thing that we both liked about Doctor Strange 2, where like he just comes in and he's like, yeah, this is the comic stuff that I like. Like Gunn's talked about how every villain in this movie was caught by their hero, like whoever their hero was in the comics, and Javelin's is Green Lantern. So,
oh yeah,
to this movie,
wow.
Green Lantern exists, and
not that that's brought up or
anything.
anything.
Not that that's brought up, but that was like a thing he was thinking of while making it. So, like in Gunn's mind, Green Lantern is just an established hero in this world, and that's obviously not the case with those movies.
Another thing that blew my mind from Gunn's commentary is when he mentioned that the chapter titles are not CG.
Are practical?
And there are one or two of them that I think have to be CG, and he just wasn't thinking about them when he said that.
I would imagine most of them are practical, but there's ones here, because obviously the Starro one is CG.
But the fire one can't be real.
Yeah.
The Jotunheim versus Harley Quinn one, like,
I'm gonna guess the practical ones are all the ones that are written like into whatever they're on, like the one that he says that is where it's written into the mud, and then there's the one earlier where it's written on the toilet.
But I think even the blood in the water might be practical.
I don't know. I don't think you could do that practically.
I don't know. He talked about it like they all were, but you definitely couldn't do the fire that way.
I also don't think when the wind blows and the leaves say now, I don't think that's practical. But I could be wrong, because I also didn't think that that shot where he rips the guy in half.
But the one on the roof that's a camera move. I mean, that is really cool.
Yeah. No, that looks really sweet.
So can we talk about the comic structure of this? Well, first, let me just say that the reveal of all of the Starros on the faces is real creepy, and everything about the genetic engineering with this is off-putting and makes your skin crawl in exactly the way it should. It's also very Doctor Who, which is interesting because the guy running all of this is played by one of the Doctors.
Andy's great.
Yes, he's wonderful.
It's awesome that...
And it makes his brain good.
it's awesome that he was able to keep Starro as being pink and blue and still make him really horrifying.
Yes.
Because he's genuinely scary in this movie.
Well, and Gunn's great at that, at taking stuff straight off the page, but finding a way to use it, for his ends.
Yeah.
He can have his cake and eat it too. Again, if you can make Polka Dot Man disturbing and tragic, you can do anything. And I feel like Rocket and Groot were kind of the foundation for that. We were kind of the test for that. Because a lot of people were like, with Guardians, oh my god, you made me feel for a talking raccoon.
Yeah.
This is taking all of that like 10 times weirder. Where like, I think in 2014, people were ready for a talking raccoon in a way they might not have at least thought they would be ready for like man that throws polka dots at people.
Yeah, that's probably still a little too silly by that point.
Or they would have thought it was.
Yeah.
What I mean is, I don't know if it would have gotten them into a movie theater.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. I was also shocked that
maybe you're not ready for this, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah, Yankee Doodle dandies. And the Thinker is probably like the most evil and twisted person in this movie. Maybe next to Waller. Like, it's between the two of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're both doing a lot of the same things. Because one of the things that I really like about Starro in this movie is that he's just like, he is what the Suicide Squad is too. Like, they're taking this thing and they're using it for their own purpose and trying to make it into a weapon that they can use. And Gunn makes a really good case for making Starro a Suicide Squad villain over a Justice League villain in this movie.
Absolutely. He is the furthest extreme of the thing that most of the Suicide Squad members have in common, and the government in that case is the parental figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And biologically, Starro is... Sorry, I don't want to talk over this too long because I know you're going to want to talk about this. But Starro is biologically like a kind of personification of what Amanda Waller and the government at large are doing to people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a victim.
Yeah. No, that's something that I really liked about
Oh, and I just had this thought. Sorry, I'd never thought of this before.
That's okay.
The Thinker comes up with Starro the Conqueror, right? Starro is not a conqueror. I mean, he could be if he wanted to, but he's just out in space, happy, looking at the stars, doesn't want anybody to bother him. And
no, he's just like a being flying through space, and the Americans find him and they go, look at this thing that can like take things into it and absorb them. It's a conqueror. We can make it into a weapon. And that's not what Starro is. That's what I like about him as that character, is that it's almost like the Americans want him to be the comic book Starro, but that's not what he is. He's this version that's morphed into, like I said, in a way to be a good Suicide Squad villain over Justice League.
Well, and I'm going to take this even further. I'm going to try not to lose this point here. So,
yeah.
So the social commentary with this movie is about the way that our government, not yours because you live in Canada, but the way that...
Yeah, mine doesn't even have a government.
The way that our... and it's, it's got to be a better place to live. I don't know. I'm kidding. But the way that our government destabilizes countries, and with Star. By the way, this looks spectacular. With Starro grabbing the Thinker and about to rip him apart. Which there's a deleted scene that makes this way rougher and grosser when he gets pulled apart.
I think I've seen that, but I don't remember.
Yeah. I mean, it's already pretty gross when he hits the glass, but...
I love how cartoony it is that he completely explodes.
If memory serves, I think, because it's been a couple weeks since I watched that, I think his jaw comes apart.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to watch that.
It's pretty messed up. The shot with the helmet is amazing.
It's, I think, the best shot in this movie. It's that, and I really love the opening
shot. The fight
shot
that you see in the helmet?
Yeah. Yeah, and Gunn talks about how that Harley fight is the best action scene he's ever filmed, at least at this point. I think this tops it just in that I love how small and visceral it is.
And how impossible to shoot this is. Like, this is
Yeah.
how you use the technology to enhance a scene, not just lazily get it up there somehow and hope for the best. Like, you can't tell that that's done with any digital removal or anything, but well, not even removal. Like, some of that's in a computer, because, as Gunn says in his commentary, you'd have cameras in the helmet.
Yeah, no, we took
in the
like
reflection.
a shot and we like put it onto the helmet, like we superimposed it onto a CGI helmet, and it looks really good.
But real quick,
Yeah.
or as quick as I can make it, I've got to try to get through this point, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. I just thought of this. So you've got destabilizing countries. You've got plausible deniability. We put Starro in Corto Maltese so that if anybody finds it, they can't track it back to us. We set up countries for failure, and then when they turn on us or they turn on the world, we blame them for it, right? We find Starro. We're using him for our own ends, and just like with those other countries, we call him the conqueror because we're blaming everything on him.
Yeah. No, that's a good call. Yeah. No, I love that choice that he isn't a conqueror. That's the name that they gave him. That's one of the big things that stood out to me on first viewing.
Yeah, and using a comic book thing like that in a totally other context to enhance the social commentary. Mm-hmm. That's being creative with the material. And that's, sorry, real quick, that's the way that you take source material and change it without, like that's not change for the sake of change. Mm-hmm. That's doing something inspired with it.
Yeah, no, it's taking something and changing it to better fit your narrative. It's like you always say, Cap, you can change things, you just have to make it work. How do you like the shot of the glass going into the heart? Because I remember that was something that people complained about when this came out, as being too silly.
Did they think it was like thematically on the nose, or did they think it was just a silly thing to show?
I think a lot of people just found it really silly.
I like it as an idea.
Mm-hmm. I've never had an issue with it. I always thought it was nice, that in a way he's the one with the most pure heart, with the exception of Ratcatcher.
If he actually killed her, we'd show her heart too, but she doesn't die, so
that is true.
We don't have to do that. Yeah, we don't have to go inside her also.
Even if he shot her in the head, it would have shown her heart.
Right. Well, he would have slowed down,
Exactly. We would have seen it stop beating. And we hit your heart MCU thing. That's how you know this is an MCU director.
Yes, right. We got the heart motif. Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about structure, because I keep dancing around it.
Yeah, this is maybe one of the most comic booky films in that you can literally break it down by the issue count, in that the titles that we see, those are the issue breaks, where it's like, now here's the next issue, and then the next issue. And that's also part of why the Harley Quinn thing stands out to me as being a tie-in, is because it's like, here's this issue, and it's completely divorced from what we've had before.
Yeah, it's very purely introducing yet another aspect of comic book storytelling to general audiences, and also just letting those of us that love comics get to kind of experience that even more on a big screen, because, or if you watched it at home on HBO Max, because it was during the pandemic. But that was a really creative way to handle that I hadn't seen attempted in a comic movie. And I got to be honest with you, on first viewing, it was kind of off-putting because I didn't understand why we were doing it, and it seemed meandery. And I have this with multiple Gunn movies. I'm finding that, like, I'll have a real bad first watch, and then when I see it again, it all clicks in. It's like I got to have one watch for content, and it's kind of a chore. And then when I look at it again, it all kind of comes together. And I don't mean that it's a perfect movie. I don't mean that I don't have some criticisms of it here and there, but
Yeah, of course.
everything, all of the choices make sense now. They're not arbitrary. Most of his movies I tend to like more on multiple viewings, and I have kind of that Fight Club thing that I always talk about, where like I hated that movie on first watch, and the second watch it was one of my favorite movies, just magically.
Yeah. No, and I think with this specifically, it is in part just how just like go it is at all times. Like if you're not with it right away, it can easily just take off without you.
And I could say that is kind of a criticism maybe that I have. I don't know how you necessarily get around it with this many characters and the choice of story we're telling. That I think it is really easy to lose a decent amount of the audience on a first watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, the Milton thing. On a second or third viewing, this is wonderfully funny. And on a first viewing, I did not notice this guy all the way through, and that's why it works on a second viewing, because neither did anybody else.
Well, yeah,
but I felt weird about it the first time out,
yeah.
because I was like, oh, I guess I should have been paying attention to this random guy. I didn't even realize he was the same guy in the van listening to Kansas. Which, by the way, I don't know if you caught that, but Point of No Return.
Yeah,
that was a good song choice.
Oh, I mean, I've listened to the soundtrack a million times. Yeah.
But I just mean how that what's happening in the story there.
No, I know. This scene also has my favorite Polka Dot Man line delivery, where he goes, "Look at him, he's dead."
But I also like the way that Gunn will use a joke like that to further character development.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the thing that we talked about the other day when we did the Guardians movies, that a lot of Gunn's humor comes from a character place. That's what I like about it.
It's just storytelling 101. No details that don't reveal something.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to look at a comedy like this and say, it's either funny or it's not. Comedy is objective. And I go, or subjective, and I say, yes, but if you're trying to actually tell a story and it's not just farce, if you're not finding it funny, then that might be a detractor for your enjoyment of it, but it doesn't make it not a good story. Because Gunn is doing both with this and most of his movies, where it's both funny and a real story, a dramatic narrative. So your jokes are going to have to reveal something about your characters. And so the whole Polka Dot Man Milton thing is about his insecurities and trying to latch on to a person. Like, he's got kind of the same codependent thing that Harley Quinn is supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and another good example too is we have these things that are eating King Shark, and I think that's King Shark being faced with what he is, where he sees these things as friends and they immediately try to eat him. Which is what he does. Not that everybody sees King Shark and they go, "Oh, this guy's friendly," but that's what he was dealing with at the beginning of the movie.
That's a terrific point. Yeah.
It also breaks my heart every time when he hits the ground and there's the tear going out of his eye. It's so sad.
I couldn't believe that he survives.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's like completely unbreakable.
The first time I saw this, I really thought that we killed him there.
So did I. I was really worried when those things started eating him that was kind of it for him.
Anthony Cabrera put in a $10 super chat. Thanks a ton, man. He says, interesting that Starro has, outside of a comics audience, kind of been considered a joke villain, while folks in the know recognize the insane threat Starro can be and has been in other media.
Yeah, I think that's just one of those things where people, that aren't into this stuff go, "Oh, he's a giant starfish. That's stupid." Because there's definitely stuff like that with general audience.
It's members. From that same mentality that says you cannot make a serious Fantastic Four movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And it feels like it's almost Gunn's mission in life, at least with superhero movies, to prove that whole thing wrong. That you can take... I mean, he pretty clearly has the same philosophy I do with storytelling, that you can make anything work, you just have to make it work. I mean, that's kind of what he lives by, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, he's done Ego the Living Planet, Starro, Polka Dot Man.
Again, even Rocket Raccoon and Groot.
Yeah, King Shark. There's just like countless stuff at this point that he's made where it's not to say like added legitimacy to, as in like none of the stuff ever worked, but it's just, I think, shown people like, hey, this is maybe why you should take some of the stuff a bit more seriously, and you can still have fun with it, but we can tell actual stories with these characters.
Yeah, it's simply concept versus execution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And isn't it more impressive when you're ambitious enough to attempt that kind of thing and it actually works out than just avoiding it entirely and going back to the same old well over and over again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Gunn does such a good job throughout his career of just saying like, hey, let's celebrate some of these smaller characters that, at a point would never have been in a film, that we can start doing now.
Yeah, it's a different sort of diversity conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like, can you believe that Peacemaker, of all characters, is both in a movie and has his own TV show? Like,
no, I can't.
At one point, that would have been insane. Like, just conceptually,
it was insane when it happened, just because it was not a guarantee this movie was going to perform, and we'll never know if it would have, because of the way it was released. Like, the fact that this didn't do well in the movie theater doesn't tell you anything, because nobody was going to the movie theater.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I don't know, but I couldn't believe it was greenlit.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I mean, he went from doing this to being the head of the studio, so clearly they had some faith.
I like the setup and payoff well enough with the smaller bullets thing.
I like it. You don't initially think it's set up because it's a joke.
Yeah.
So you might not be thinking about it when you get to this point.
Well, and you also might not be thinking about it because so much has happened. You've had so many different characters that you're you're trying to follow. But
what I mean, because with a lot of setup, it's almost like somebody says something and the movie, you feel like the movie is saying, hey,
put a pin in that.
Brain. Exactly. Yeah. Put a pin in it.
But what I like about it is, maybe it's just because I like that joke in the first place, but we haven't really talked about the way Waller's been used to comedic effect, and I really think she is, she is, it's that kind of like anti-comic Deadpool thing where it's like we don't have to turn everybody else into a joke to still tell a comedic thing. Like, you let everybody else be whatever they are and play things straight if they're going to play things straight, but you find the comedic situation around that with the jokier characters, are just, a naturally weird or goofy thing that happens, right?
So I think Rick Flag has that too, where he's not a comedic character, but there's a lot of moments with him that are funny just out of what's happening.
So you got that great bit where Waller goes, anything in his hands is a deadly weapon, and then 5 seconds later she says it again about Peacemaker, and he goes, and
are you taking the piss?
and Bloodsport goes, he does exactly what I do.
Yeah, I love when he questions her and she's like, what? She's like so confused by it. It's very funny.
It's just a wonderful balance of absurdity and realism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's why the Starro and Ego and those kinds of things are as a fresh feeling as they are, because what I think a lot of us can't get our minds around is how grounded relatively some of this stuff feels, as ridiculous as what you're actually seeing is. It's all about attitude, and it's all about creating a set of rules and following it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Grounded doesn't mean this could happen in real life. Grounded means you made me buy while I was sitting here that I was looking at real life. That's the difference.
Yeah, Gunn grounds all of his movies in real human emotion.
But also practically just tells you what the rules are, how the thing works.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he cheats a little bit with ego. I won't get through all that again, but...
Well, with the rule thing, I like the little kind of subtle joke that...
Okay, I have an issue with the general guy that became president. Like, I get that he's upset that he's not gonna, get to rule the world anymore or whatever, but he just stands there and waits for a starfish to get his head. Like, it's one of those things where everybody else seems dumbed down, and our heroes are smart because they're just the heroes.
Well, I don't think it's like a dumbed down thing. I actually really like that moment because I like scenes where we kind of take a villain and they look around and they see what they've done, where they have like that brief moment of realization where they've realized how much they've screwed everything over and caused their own defeat. I like it through that. Like, sure, you can say, well, realistically, why isn't he fighting against it?
But nobody else does either except for the squad. That's the problem, is that all of his men also just stand there and get attacked.
Well, they're all shooting.
Yeah, but
part of that
basic self-preservation, you'd put something in front of your face. You wouldn't be it would be an impulse. You wouldn't be able to help but go, these things are flying out of the sky and grabbing people's faces. The first thing you do instinctually is put your arm over your face, and none of those guys do. It's exactly the same problem as the third act of Guardians 1 with the arrow that just goes through a bunch of guys. They just stand there and wait for the arrow to come to them, even though they have plenty of time to get out of the way.
Well, with the arrow thing, I think it's supposed to be that it's moving so fast. Because the arrow gets back to Yondu before the first guy's even fallen down.
Yeah, but sure I never bought that we were seeing it really in slow motion. I feel like at least the last couple of guys have time to jump away, but it's the same sort of thing to me. And so you can make an excuse for the president, but the fact that everybody else does it too.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no issue with that. I think that's fine.
I also want to talk a little bit, again, structurally about the non-linear choices, where, because it's different than showing us, the inmate express thing, getting us excited about action, and then going back and showing us the boring stuff. Every time we roll time backwards, it's to show us what's going on with other important characters simultaneous with what we've seen before, instead of intercutting back and forth. That's the choice that's made and makes it feel, like you said, like issues of a comic book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
We're in this issue, we're gonna jump over and show you the subplot that was happening simultaneous with the thing we just saw, and then they're gonna link up and converge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like with that stuff in Jotunheim, I don't think you could have done that. Like, it would have, I think, felt more clunky if we did that all, like, cut back and forth between both sides. I think you need to be in the Rick Flag Peacemaker stuff, and then you need to be in the Bloodsport stuff. I don't think it would have been more awkward if they were cutting back and forth between the two.
Yes, and would have been what the first movie would have totally done with it.
Yeah, exactly. How impressive is it that this is all, like, bright day, and like, Starro looks fantastic.
That's a really good point. Now, we are kind of, doing the saturated color thing a little bit.
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, it's not.
But we didn't darken it up.
Movies where it's raining and it's dark, and I mean, you can say the same thing with King Shark too, because King Shark looks really good throughout this film.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what's impressive about Starro to me, again, just tonally, is this is all horrifying, and what we're essentially looking at is a Powerpuff Girls fight.
I also like that Starro breaks out and he's just immediately like, I'm just gonna smash things. This is my town now. he's just angry, after being locked up for 30 years. And he's just taking great glee, just running around smashing everything.
Yeah, and I like the reveal that he just wants to be left alone, and it's impressive that because I'm terrified by collective consciousnesses.
Mhm.
Like the Borg in Star Trek. That's always the scariest thing to me. Is like even before death or torture or something, just having your individuality taken from you and having to stand there and watch someone control you.
Yeah.
And Gunn does a spectacular job of having that very idea and that villain be terrifying, and Waller is still scarier than he is.
Hmm. No, absolutely. The big thing that
Because she does the same thing with almost like a sadistic glee. I mean, sort of, kind of like she justifies it to other people and herself as necessary, but she's clearly power mad.
no, and I think especially with like the screaming stuff that she gets to do in this one,
Yeah,
that she didn't in the first one, is Gunn does a really good job of making her feel big in a way that she's not physically.
that's a good point.
Because obviously she's not like the kingpin version of Amanda Waller that we get sometimes, but she feels like it.
Yeah, she's got an intimidating presence all the time. Do you think that she is wearing a mask that in moments like that cracks?
Like she's always crazy, you mean? Or
No,
like in what way?
No, I mean that she is, like she's wearing this, like super stoic, cold, mask,
I see what you're
and
saying.
it can break in places where you'll see, like there is, whether she is, like ultimately psychotic or not. There's actually like an emotional person in there that you could you could get to.
Yeah, no, I think she
Because I don't
definitely
think she's
puts on
full on
front.
unfeeling. I think there is a part of her that doesn't like that she feels the necessity of, like, killing squad members sometimes when she has to, but it's very difficult. And I think this is intentionally, pardon me, ambiguous, where it's hard to tell when or if she's feeling that way because she doesn't actually want to have to do that, but thinks it's necessary, and when it's, well, this isn't going according to my plans, so I'm irritated.
Well, and I think without having read it, you perfectly described like everything Ostrander does with that character, because those are all ideas in that comic run that he explores with her. No, I think there's definitely elements of that in this film.
Monster Num Num is his version of Hulk Smash.
Well, yeah, that's very much the Hulk smash bit from Avengers, right? Where it's King Nanaue, Num Num. They're very similar moments. Although he needed to yell, "Hey Hawkeye, that's your mom."
Now, when Bloodsport has to look at Starro and say that's your mom, I'm a little confused because I thought the idea was that no matter what he did, he always saw her.
Well, I don't think Bloodsport literally thinks that he can see his mom. He's just saying like, "Hey, this is a thing that you're traumatized by," and he says that line earlier where he says, I turned them into my mom in my head and I killed them. So he's just saying like, "Hey, polka dot man."
But I
Right
think it's
there is your
inconsistent
mom.
about it, because if that's the case, if he can turn it on and off like that, because in some places it plays
Well,
like
no,
he's cursed by it, and in
that's
other
not what I'm
places
saying.
he does it on purpose. So, like, why would I don't understand the I turned them into my mom line, because why? And we didn't really talk about the scene in the club. Why does he see them there? Like, there, it's like he can't help it, and he just lives with it.
No, so I think he sees them just everywhere.
That's what I'm saying. So
But what I'm saying is,
my point is, why
Bloodsport
doesn't he
know that.
see her with Starro already before Bloodsport says it?
Probably because he's not humanoid, I would imagine.
Oh, okay.
Like he's so different from being that type of a thing.
I wish we'd talk more about that dance sequence, by the way. And I just want to mention this really quick. I just really like that I buy the camaraderie as quickly as I do. Like, that's a scene that you really have to have. And
Well, that's a scene that is a better version of a scene from the first film, where
Yeah.
the first film has that bar scene that everybody talked about as being the best scene, and that is a better version of it.
Well, and I think Gunn does a good job of giving us beats that are in other things he's done, but he's not remaking the movie again. So it's like sometimes he just uses things that he's proven to himself works, because that is the same scene. Like, I feel like I should complain about this, but it works. It's the same scene kind of in the bar in Guardians 1 with
I
Drax
guess
and Rocket.
kind of. Just the only difference there being is that they start more like friendly, and then
They become
up.
adversarial, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Well, here's like the one moment where they get to just be guys hanging out. Like it's almost sad in a way because we know where it's going.
Mutale, do you feel in the third act, Ratcatcher 2 makes the other members pointless? Because without her summoning all the rats, they wouldn't have defeated Starro. No, because without, like she facilitates other things the other squad members do, right? Like, this on its own doesn't penetrate the eye.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have Harley Quinn with the spear, which, by the way, it's too bad for Superman that she wasn't in BVS, because she would know what to do with the kryptonite spear.
Yeah. No, so you need Bloodsport to kind of take up that leadership role and tell him what to do. And then Polka Dot Man injures him, and then she summons the rats to attack him, and then Harley penetrates the eye. Yeah, I think they all do something in this climax. Except, I guess, King Shark. He eats some of them. That's about it.
Well, he gets the party started, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. He teaches the rats. The rats were far away, and they watched King Shark eat some of them, and then they knew what to do.
They're not all as on the same level of essential necessarily.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Ratcatcher, if you made this movie, if the movie was called Ratcatcher 2, I don't know if she actually beat Starro at the end.
I also don't, at this point, I know I'm not thinking about it in terms of like the action of like, oh, Ratcatcher is beating him with rats, because a lot of people complained about that when this came out. Like, I'm just thinking about it more in terms of its ideas and what it's thematically saying by that.
And you're right that it does kind of come out and spell the lesson at the end, but
that is one of those Gun moments that like I tear up most of the times I watch this.
It's
like,
because it's
really
so
sweet.
in her head about it, right? Like, it's her, and it's not even her having a realization. That is the sort of character that doesn't need an arc herself. She facilitates everybody else's arc, but I think she's got the tear down her face. I think it's because she's vindicated in
absolutely
in a conviction that she has held on to with dear life for the whole movie, trying to teach these other characters, particularly Bloodsport, that they are worthwhile and that there's a real person in them, and that they're not monsters that the way the world is telling them they are, regardless of things they've done in their past.
Yeah, her worldview has just been proven right. This is the one thing in this film that I'm like, oh, I don't like looking at that, is Starro with the blood-filled eye.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. That doesn't bother me at all.
It doesn't bother me when they're in the eye. It's when we're outside, I'm like, oh, I don't like looking at that. That's real gross.
Oh, I found that comment I was going to try to read earlier, and I'm glad I'm doing it now because it also pertains to this scene. Christian Ogden, as much as I love this movie, its two biggest problems are Harley and the ending. The Harley subplot is 100% pointless and easily could have been cut. And why is the Suicide Squad saving the world from Starro? They're a Black Ops squad. The ending of the movie really should have been the destruction of the facility. And of course, you're rewriting it to say that. But I have this question to you, Austin, because you've read some Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Is Suicide Squad never about these characters
saving the world
or standing in for the superheroes even though they're villains?
I mean, we definitely we definitely go to bigger places. There's stuff where you'll have like terrorist groups that have like satellites in space where they're gonna destroy the planet or something, and the squad has to stop them. Like we definitely get bigger and kind of keep that Black Ops thing. I also don't necessarily think that Starro will destroy the. Like, I don't think it's a destroy the world thing at the end of the day. I think Starro will destroy this town out of anger, out of being tortured for 30 years, and then fly off into space again. If he can fly, maybe he can't, but
yeah, that's the thing.
Like, I don't necessarily think that Starro destroys the world.
I'm buying that these characters, particularly Bloodsport, have gotten to at least a place where they couldn't, or I guess just him, really. He couldn't live with himself. He'd have a hard time sleeping at night if he just let this thing rip apart this country. He feels a sense of responsibility because Waller's not going to clean up this mess correctly. And they can either stand back and let all these people die, or like, what does he really have to lose in helping them? And yeah, I don't think it's really about saving the world either once the evil president is dead, because if they actually could control Starro, then the world is at stake. Because we didn't really talk about this, but you have the politics of, and this plays into whether or not Harley Quinn's subplot is necessary. You've got the politics of the president that wants to use Starro as a nuclear deterrent, and the one that wants to rule the world with an iron fist, and or at the very least get everyone to take them seriously, which means sick Starro on countries. And Harley Quinn gives us the scarier of those two things. Because she kills that first president. And I think, could you tell this story more or less without her doing that? And could we just have this the simple setup in the first place of that evil second president and not that first guy, and not have that kind of political, intrigue at the beginning? Yeah, you could do it that way. I guess the point of it is, here are the consequences of the actions of the more psychotic of the Suicide Squad.
Mm-hmm. When it gives us both a look into the villains, like you said, and also it's not as simplistic as if we cut that and it was just the general guy that hated America or whatever. It makes it a little bit more complicated.
Well, and what I like, yeah, but I guess I could see the argument of, but why does it have to be why is it complicated for the sake of complicated? What I like about it is it's more consequences to Waller's crazy choices. Mm-hmm. Like she is forcing these people to go there. Gee, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I feel like we almost need to roll the film again.
I know, right? There's just so much with this movie.
I've got more comments to read. I think I've got a super chat I've missed. We'll try not to go too long past the movie.
And here's Weasel. He made it. It's funny because this is just like a joke, but now I guess technically this is setup stuff, because Weasel's going to be in Creature Commandos. And Rick Flag Sr., so I'm excited to see how they do that.
Yeah, and I still say you'll see TDK again.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think
because apparently he survived, which I didn't even realize until I listened to Nathan Fillion's episode on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I always figured that was an intentional choice, because it shows everybody dead, and then when it shows him, he's like coughing up blood. So he's not just like a dead corpse on the ground. You know why I missed that the first time around? Because you were too into the song. Because there's this song that keeps saying, "These are people who died." Checkers put in a $5 super chat to make a joke. He says, "I'm over an hour into this and I haven't seen any new Leto footage. Is this not the Ayer cut? Also, what is this garbage aspect ratio? Unsubscribe." Should have been in the Snyder Cut aspect ratio, like an old episode of Seinfeld.
We're gonna do the commentary tonight on a CRT. Writer, $2 super chat, beat for beat the same prison break scene from Birds of Prey.
That's just like factually untrue.
I was gonna say I can't speak too much to that movie right now because I saw it once and I hated it, and obviously at some point we'll have to do that here, and then I'll give it more of its due. But we had another comment about that.
I mean, Birds of Prey is better action than Suicide Squad, like the first one.
It's not a poorly made film.
No, exactly.
I was going to make this point earlier. Isn't it weird that we basically already have a trilogy of these?
Yeah.
Because Birds of Prey is a direct sequel to Suicide Squad. I mean, you can call it a spin-off. It really
wants to be that first film.
But it's still in that vein.
Yeah.
And then like Harley Quinn is the through, between all three of those movies. So like it technically kind of watches like a trilogy, or at least is sort of a trilogy. It would be really weird to watch them all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't hate myself enough to do that. I mean,
the good thing is that it ends well.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that by the time you got to this,
really bad movies.
Would you be so out of breath that you just wouldn't even want to run the better marathon? Like,
yeah, exactly. Well, I did a watch party on our Discord of the first Suicide Squad movie, Assault on Arkham, and Hell to Pay, with the idea that we would finish on this until we found out that it wasn't streaming in Canada yet.
Oh, so no!
Two pretty bad movies, and then one that I remember being okay with, Hell to Pay.
Hell to Pay is really good.
Yeah, I need to rewatch it because we were talking over it, but I remember liking it.
That'll be fun to do here, yeah. Discussing topics, doesn't Harley come off a bit like Mystique in this film with the way she uses her feet to free herself? I mean, I hadn't thought of that. I guess that's...
Yeah, I guess in that moment, they're pretty similar. Outside of that, like, not really, but...
I thought when she unlocked that with her feet, she was going to drop real hard on her back. Did you have that?
Yeah.
I was kind of cringing and waiting for it. Like, oh, she's going to get hurt real bad. And then she does, like, the cat-like drop.
And that's maybe one of the only things that we kept from the first movie, is that there's a lot of those scenes of her when she's in prison where she's, like, doing, like, acrobatic stuff in her cell.
That's another music choice I like, that she is singing the song that we're then going to use during her escape sequence.
Yeah, the Louis Prima song.
Well, it was kind of fun because I couldn't tell what she was singing initially. And then when we actually got to that song, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard this before. I know the song. I'm sorry, what?
I think it took me like a second or third viewing before I realized that's what she was doing.
And then he says, also, do you think the film would have been drastically different if Deadshot had returned instead of Bloodsport coming in? Oh, I'm glad he mentioned that. I think the impetus for this being involved would have been different, since his daughter was not following in his criminal footsteps. You kind of alluded to that earlier.
I also think that he would probably have just ignored the daughter stuff and made something more close to comic book Deadshot. I could be wrong, but I feel like that would be a character he reworked a lot.
No, it would have been a lot different, because what would the emotional connection be with Ratcatcher, if anything? Like, the problem is he's just too good of a person already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely reworks everything. And like I said, I would think that he would latch on to the comic book Deadshot thing where he's almost suicidal. And you could maybe do something with him in Polka Dot Man, but it might be too much of a double beat.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, except Polka Dot Man is, and he kind of self-proclaims this, he's a crazy person in a way that Deadshot just isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And Bloodsport isn't either, but they're not trying to connect those characters up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Outside of that, it would be a completely different movie. I've always wondered what it would look like if he was Bronze Tiger.
Oh, interesting.
But also at the same time, you lose a lot of what's interest. Like, you can't do the thing with him in Peacemaker if he's Bronze Tiger.
I just
But
thought
that
of
was one of the characters that they talked about using.
I
So
just
I've
thought of
always
so many other things I wanted to mention. I don't think I'm going to
Yeah.
be able to get them all out. One was
rapid fire.
going to Cordell Maltese. I wish Gunn had used the opportunity to cast a Vicky Vale.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me that just because of the '89 thing,
and because she's in that comic.
Oh, that's right, and
she's in that first issue.
That's right.
No, I said that to you before I read that, and then when I read it, I was like, wait a minute, she's here, which made me think that maybe that's why she goes specifically to Cordell Maltese in '89. Sam Hamm might have read that and then put her in there.
Well, no, because that comes from Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a Suicide Squad thing.
But what, Vicky Vale specifically being there though?
No, but I don't know what the connection.
When did that come out?
Suicide
Yeah.
Squad? That's like 87, 88.
Oh, is it that late? No, because the point I'm making is he might have thought to have Vicky Vale like shooting for the magazine in Cordell Maltese because she's in Cordell Maltese in the Suicide Squad book.
Oh, I don't think she is. I don't think she's in Cordell Maltese in that.
I thought she was.
She's just at the prison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because she's talking to John Economos, and in the
I
comics,
couldn't remember what the situation was.
In the comics, he's like the guy who runs the prison. Obviously, here, he's just like an IT guy.
Okay, well, once again, I'm wasting time. and the after credit scene right at the end is the setup for the Peacemaker show. And if you didn't stick around and you missed this, you might have thought, like a lot of people did, that Peacemaker was going to be a prequel show. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought, because I was like, well, he dies. Oh, he doesn't die. These are not people who die.
I always think it's interesting because it's kind of like a trick to the audience where it's like, oh, maybe Rick Flag is still alive. As you're kind of going down the hall when they're talking about it, and then you pan in and you realize it's Peacemaker.
That's true. And you know what we could have done?
What's that?
Well, we could have had him take a pencil and throw it in a fly at a wall and go bullseye,
and say, "What a joke."
Oh yeah, and with the joke thing, I didn't get a chance to bring up the comedian connection and the fact that he's like comedian if he wasn't self-aware about it, but that's also the character that was the blueprint for comedian.
Yeah, because they're all stand-ins for DC characters in Watchmen, and comedians Peacemaker,
which I didn't know until recently. Somebody mentioned that to me.
Yeah. No, so I didn't think about that in terms of like the what a joke thing in terms of Watchmen though. So,
yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to mention is I had a couple of ins that I found later with this movie that made me appreciate it more, like I said, and one of them is in just kind of comparing and contrasting it to the thematic ideas in the Guardians movies, because Guardians is another team thing about outcasts who come together to form a family. This is not exactly a family. It's more people who come together in a mission and help each other find their humanity. For some of them, kind of like at the end of their lives, where it's like a last-ditch effort to find the something like good about themselves before inevitably they bite the dust. And with Guardians, it's about characters who are lost and empty and have been stolen from their families. And this is about mostly people. Again, you've got those examples on each end that don't have this in order to like illustrate it further. But most of these characters are people who were like damaged and ruined by their families. Mm-hmm. And so you have outcasts versus perceived monsters.
Yeah, and I think a big thing is with this, and in relation to Guardians, is I don't think these people are still a team by the end of this movie. Like, I do think they go off in their own ways by the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
and that, you know, they're not a family like you said.
Guardians also doesn't have characters that are really exploring an ideology. There's not that spectrum.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. We're not. There's not as much. I don't know, for lack of a better word, just like things going on. Well, especially because you know this movie has so much intrigue, so there's a lot more. You know, you kind of see their different takes on things
And that's
in
not to
a
say there's
movie
not
like
any social
Guardians.
commentary in the Guardians movies. I think it's much more pronounced here. Like in that
'Cause
first
this
movie,
movie's
there's
way more political.
yeah, and like there's the religious dogma thing in
Hmm.
the first movie with Ronan,
Ronan.
but it again, it's not super pronounced. It's not what the whole movie's about.
Hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. No, and I mean it's changing what you're doing for the book that you're, or like for the book you're adapting, right? Because uh, Ostrander Suicide Squad's very like political, and like the characters are trying to like screw each other over, both politically, and then on top of that you have like the Black Ops team, and so we're dealing a lot more with that kind of stuff with this movie as opposed to Guardians, which is a space adventure thing.
Yeah,
It's
and so he's playing to his strengths, and he's talking about some of the same kinds of things that he's really interested in, but he's not making the same movie again either. I want to read this comment from Makura, and he made several points. I'm not going to read all of them because we don't have time, but this is kind of related to what we're talking about right now. So I'll read this. I'll read a couple, some other live comments, and then I'll get to the tweet length reviews, and then we'll bow out right after that. Gunn, this is Makura. Gunn is very interested in people who are victims as much as they are victimizers. Almost everyone, save Waller and the Thinker, have, because those are the real monsters, right?
yeah,
Has
exactly.
severe abuses placed upon them in the past. I was talking about that earlier. The squad themselves are victims of Task Force X, Waller's program, but have also done things to make others their own victims of violence, and many will see their fate in the squad as fair. Considering this, Starro is undeniably a victim of grave horrors, but lashes out against people who have nothing to do with those abuses and is put down. And again, I think Starro is like the other member of the Suicide Squad.
Hmm. Well, I see Starro as almost like a personification of the Suicide Squad in a way, because like I said, they're very similar ideas. Like, um,
And biologically, again, the way he works is the way Waller works. I just think that's super interesting.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's kind of ironic, but also she wants to use him ultimately, or at least that was initially the idea, or the government does. I don't know, honestly, how much of the Starro program really has anything to do with Waller.
I don't think it does, but
Like,
I
I don't think
think
it's her idea.
Waller is the personification of the American government, and
She's everything that's wrong with that system.
exactly, yeah. So like that's how it connects. Where she's not literally the one that was doing the Starro stuff, but she is just who we see as our representation of who did.
While we certainly don't want Starro to destroy a nation, it is still hard to feel good about his fate when the figures who set the events in motion will surely never face the consequences. Justice is very real for those below, but nothing more than a childish notion for those above. Yeah, that's well said. And he also says Bloodsport also continues Gunn's preoccupation with where the line is in finding the good in imperfect parental figures and them being too horrible to maintain a connection with. And that's a good point, kind of furthering the Yondu thing, but not in an endearing way.
Mhm.
But Ratcatcher's father is a little closer to the Yondu thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Only in that he's a super flawed, messed up person, but he raised a child right.
Mhm. Also, sorry, because I know you moved on to the parent thing, but I just had this thought with
Yeah,
Starro
no, go right
too.
ahead.
It's interesting that because we don't out any of that stuff, that Starro is the conqueror in the public eye too, because that's all he'll be known for. Is just he broke out and tried to conquer a town, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and in the same way that the the government and the media would try to spin Corto Maltese that way if they could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Robert Wild, $2 super chat. Favorite squad member in this you want to see again? I guess the default for me is Ratcatcher, although I don't know what else you would do with her exactly. But I don't mind like a, Captain America or Superman type that has, more to say about the other characters around them and helping them turn into something better. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, she's definitely up there for me. It's her and King Shark for me.
You want the movie where King Shark goes back home and is speaking in complete sentences.
Yeah, exactly. But don't do it in Aquaman 2, because I don't want to see him show up in that.
Okay, there were enough comments, goodness, I wish we hadn't gotten away from this, that I can't get up to the top anymore, and I think I've missed some super chats.
I don't think you did, because I think there's, oh no.
Oh no, maybe not. Maybe I did get them all.
No, because I think the one before that Robert Wild one was Ryder.
Writers, and I got that, and I got Checkers before that. Okay, no, so I'm caught up.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure you're caught up.
Okay, spectacular. Well, let me go ahead and get
I'm like 12% sure.
All of the tweet length review. Well, them's great odds. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's part of a plan.
Let me bring up Discord here. And sorry, this is the one thing I forgot to do before we started. And it's not connecting for some reason.
Oh, weird.
See, this is what happens. This is when you wish you weren't live and you could just edit this all later.
I can use the YouTube editor. Go in after the fact. You won't, but you could.
No, I mean I have before. It wouldn't be the first time. This is one of those moments where we're clearly broadcasting, but I somehow seem to be offline everywhere else.
That's so weird. Technology's stupid.
Okay, no, I'm good now. So here are the tweet length reviews for The Suicide Squad. Connor Nielsen with a sequel to one of the worst blockbusters of its decade that was in itself a blatant ripoff of his prior successes. You made that point. James Gunn impressed me not only with a DC outing that feels distinct from Guardians of the Galaxy, despite similarities in concept, I just said that, but also in his growth cinematically, an exciting and unique structure, compelling performances that make the most of the characters, legitimately funny, thoughtful scene construction, and it all looks fabulous. The Suicide Squad is a blast and a testament to the potential that comic book storytelling has yet to make on the big screen. Rating superhero, and I gotta tell you, I wish I'd seen this in the theater, although I wish I could have watched it a couple times at home and then come to like it and then go see it in the theater.
Yeah, I still remember because I saw it in the theater and you watched it like a little bit before I did, and you were like, check this out. And you sent me a picture of your screen where you were watching it of Starro like smashing something, and I was like, yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you get upset because I spoiled it for you?
Yeah, I was like, Starro was in this movie? What?
Did you not know that?
No, I'm just joking. But
I can't remember why I did that. Did I think you'd seen it already, or
no? You thought I'd already seen it.
Because I remember that very differently. Because I thought I sent you that, and then you came back with, "Oh my God, that's amazing."
No, and I was like, that is amazing. Starro looks really cool, and you were like, oh, what, you haven't seen it yet? Like, you didn't know what he looked like? And I was like, yeah, no, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, man, I'm a jerk. Okay, MattBat68, everything the 2016 movie should have been and failed to be. The Suicide Squad is funny, action-packed, and has a surprising amount of heart. It also possesses a unique structure and looks great. Interesting that everybody's latching on to that aspect of it. Add a healthy dose of well-integrated social commentary, and you have one of the best comic book movies in years rating superhero. Austin, you actually wrote one of these.
Yeah, because I was not. You don't have to read it.
You want me to
because
read
I'm not-
yours?
You don't have to. I don't even remember what I said.
Oh, well, this is what you said. Austin says Gunn boils an entire rundown into one film.
Yeah.
Oh, run, like
An
a
entire
comic
run, like a
run.
comic
Oh,
run.
I got you. Okay. And not in an overstuffed film that crams everything like Aquaman. No, he just boils Ostrander down to the core components and makes the quintessential film that takes elements from all of it. It's between this and Kick-Ass for my favorite R-rated comic movie. Really? It's wonderful.
I think this is a little bit over. I don't know. I feel like if I watch Kick-Ass again, I'd be like, it might be that.
No, I
but-
think I like this better than Kick-Ass, maybe.
I like
It's-
both of them a lot, but I think I like this one slightly more.
He says it's wonderful and easily the only good DCEU film. I don't agree with that, but I think it's probably the best written and best made of them.
It's like up here, and then I can't even show you because it's so far down. My camera doesn't capture it.
And you rated it a legend, which is predictable. Tom says, one of the first movies I'm going to show my girlfriend when she gets out and might inspire her wedding dress, 4 out of 4. And then Lord GB just said, hashtag justice for Boomerang.
Yeah. That is something where I'm like, I know it had to be done, but it does make me sad. I love Captain Boomerang, but I get it.
The nice thing is, at least he gets one of the better jokes in the movie right away when he goes, all words are, or all names are letters.
Yeah. No, I love that line. I also think he gets one like a cool kill with his boomerang before he dies too. So he at least gets to do something. But he's my favorite character in that run, so I am definitely a little sad that he died.
Well, it's he is people that died.
Well, and that's one of my favorite subtle jokes during the opening titles is that it's like, it's like Mungal, and then it shows a picture of her like burned corpse, and it's like, Weasel, and it shows him dead, and then it shows Captain Boomerang, and then the camera like zooms all around the battlefield because he gets like obliterated. I think that's really funny.
Mungal was such a weird choice.
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna see her in a movie before we've even seen like anyone else from that area of DC, really. Like,
well, it's funny because I didn't know about Mungal, so when I first watched it, I thought it was a gender swapped version of Mongrel.
oh, that's right, you told me that, and I was like, no, she's comic book.
Yeah.
Well, Austin already gave his rating. He went all the way to the top with the legend. Once again, the new scale is you've got all the way at the bottom Nemesis. That's like basically a 0. It's the worst you could be. And then a supervillain, and then a hero is like middle of the road, and then superhero, and then legend. And I'm just going superhero with this again, so I'm giving it the same rating that I gave 89. And everybody else did that too, except for you.
And what can I say? I'm a special guy.
Well, I mean, you made a good case all the way through for, why you would put it that high.
Yeah, no, like I said, for me, like it's probably my favorite R-rated superhero film, and there are a lot of good ones. Like that's not a case where that's not saying anything.
I may have.
I just really like it.
I may have a couple others.
It also helps that
on
I'm a really big
Patreon. Let
fan
me
of
check
that
real quick.
material too.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Then it also helps that I'm a really big fan of that material too. So like it's got that added bonus.
Oh yeah, good call. Chewbacca's Lover. This is on Patreon. I missed a couple of these. I liked it when I first saw it, but it's not good. Oh, I'm sorry you didn't like it.
Just
Chewbacca's
wrong.
Lover. Joe Turner, a definite superhero in my opinion. It's hard to argue with the idea of a soft reboot when it accomplishes everything the original was too incompetent to do and more. And again, I still say that it's like trying to prove how that movie could have been done, competently. Only Gunn could do so much with Polka Dot Man, and who doesn't love Starro?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Thinker.
The Thinker does not love Starro. Yeah. Well, the Thinker loves Starro on a totally different level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he loves to hurt him.
I love it. It's super creepy when he's like pleading for his life.
Oh yeah.
And then once you have the whole movie, you're really with Starro there.
I also like when he walks in and
not that I think anybody should be ripped in half, but you know what I mean. Like I'm getting.
Yeah. No, I also like when he walks in and all the stars are like pleading to be saved, and he's like, "Sorry, old chap, they've come to kill you."
Oh yeah.
Peter Capaldi is really underrated in this film. He's really good.
Yeah, well, and again, I think some of his better stuff got cut out.
That is true, but I think what is there is really good.
Everybody, we really appreciate you joining us tonight, whether you're watching live or doing it after the fact. We're going to do this on average a couple times a month. And next time, we're going to do a film that was selected by the Superhero Rewind Selection Board on Patreon. And again, that is the Patreon producers on the $10 tier. And they all put in lots of different nominations, and ultimately, through a poll, ended up landing on Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. So another kind of big heavy hitter, and one that I've talked about before.
And another big DC thing.
Yeah, maybe we'll break the mold after that and get to Marvel. And right now, the plan is, this could change, but right now we're planning on doing a double feature that night, and we are probably going to also do Superman Doomsday, because that was Austin's suggestion, and it is the 30th anniversary of Death of Superman this year, and that is the first movie that I did on the original Superhero Rewind show. So, and I've never done a commentary on it, so I think that is a terrific idea. It's not a great movie, so there's a part of me that wants to do it first and then end with. I don't know yet how we're gonna handle that, but
yeah. Well, I mean, at least I didn't suggest the Death of Superman movie.
Yeah, because I'm not doing that. I mean, I'll do that, but it would be weird to do that as a double feature, because then you'd have to come back at some point and do Reign of the Super. I would want to do those together.
Exactly. It's like Dark Knight Returns.
And I'll do the same thing, and also Long Halloween is that way too. Mm-hmm. You do it all at once, because it's basically one film.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to say thanks to all the patrons, as always. You guys are wonderful. Thanks for your support. And I want to thank individually all of our Superhero Rewind producers. Once again, $10 tier, patreon.com/geekvolution, including David Crabtree, One Reply, Bill Mills, Chewbacca's Lover, Elliot Slater, Gooster123, Hayden Spring, Joe Turner, Jajira, Joshua Gilisano, Matt Bat 68, Michael Martin, SS Jerry, Super Billy, Thomas Edgehill, Adam March, Checkers the Inventor. This is like a perk, you guys. It's a perk that you get. Damon Begay, Hot Soup, Jacob Schneider, Jonathan Campbell, Justin Hayes, Kareem Roberts, Matthew Brody, Michael Austin Gulick, Miguel Rodriguez. Austin, the day ghost. Why are you still a patron? You're like on the show.
I'm the only person who pays to be on the show. I mean, I pay you for my work.
I pay too. You don't even know. Unknown passenger, Wendell Jones, Zach. Oh, sorry, that was the last one. And Zach.
Get a last name, Zach. I think I complained to you about this when we did that rewind that I was on. Whatever that one was a while back, and I got to listen to all the Patreon names. Get a last name.
Resolve the chord.
Exactly.
Once again, we really appreciate you. This was a lot of fun, and hope you guys are enjoying the new format for the commentary show. Once again, we'll be back next week for another one, because we had to skip last week. So usually we'll have a week in between so that Austin and I can do some other things on Fridays. We're going to do some other commentaries and blind watch parties and things like that. But we'll be back again next week, and my voice no longer works, so it's time to bid you farewell. I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Hungry.
Yes, Austin, that is your hand. Oh. Very good. Bye, everybody.
See ya.